Marie's back. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Here we go. Hold on tight. So, I haven't seen the tech news yet. What does it look like, Cheryl? Have you seen it? Here it is. It's the top story of today, Friday, May 27th. We're nearly 5 months through 2022 already. It's going fast. It definitely goes faster when we're not in COVID. Is anyone else noticing this? That this year
Yeah.
is going faster? Yeah. No?
Actually, I
Then?
had a question. I had a
Yes, it's
question. I
going
was
very
hoping,
fast because. Oh, sorry, Chef.
yeah, I was hoping that John can answer this. Remember, everyone is talking about COVID almost every day, everywhere on Clubhouse until the Ukraine war happens. No one talks about it anymore. There's no your COVID room
Well,
anymore
there
after
were
that.
other
So,
things too,
is it a
Cheryl.
coincidence?
Oh, the
Because the
timing.
COVID became, the cases went down and the infection rates went down, the vaccination went up. It wasn't like something that was overwhelming the system. So it did, change. The pandemic changed. The way we were dealing with it changed. And at the same time, of course, the war was distracting. But COVID is no longer. Such a huge problem. Like it's not overwhelming the systems, the hospital systems.
Cheryl, we're talking about it in India. Our cases are going up, more cases. Masks are back. So if there are two people in the car,
Oh,
we have to wear a mask. So yeah, we are talking about it locally in
oh.
India.
And in the U.S., we honored crossing the 1 million mark a couple
Mm.
weeks ago, but it didn't get as much attention as it probably would have gotten if we were still under the lockdown.
But my question is this a good thing for everybody? Like everybody feel more like mentally healthier now? Not to always dwell into
I
COVID?
think we're just forced to get used to it.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree because the politicians, I think, just aren't talking about it as much because New York City's been up too. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at
Okay,
a certain
nice.
point, there's a human capacity uh, for handling that mentally or emotionally, and at somewhere in the 2.5 year mark, you just kind of wave your arms and say, "Fuck it, we can't continue like this." And that the problem is there's not and pandemics don't happen often enough to get the kind of historical truth of it. But I remember the Spanish flu has a chart, and you can see the chart, and it had three waves, very similar to COVID. By the way, where the first wave wasn't the biggest, the second one was by far the biggest, and then there was a third wave, and it took 2.5 years, very similar. And I imagine they went through. It would be amazing to dig into the annals to see what people said. If they could have had Twitter back then, it'd be amazing to see the thoughts that they had back then.
A good book to
Um,
read is Albert Camus's book, The Plague. And when you get to the end, he just says it's like he talked about the waves also that happened 100 years ago. But, again, this is a novel. But when it ended, he goes, it just kind of went away. And we just don't know why.
Well, because more people died, so eventually, when either you
Oh,
get
I get that. I'm just talking
virus
about the
or not.
theory of the book,
Yeah.
Ken. I'm not stupid. But I'm just talking about the book here, okay?
Friday, relax.
Okay, let's move
Happy
on to tech news then,
Friday!
Tyler.
And
Okay.
the development of
Good morning.
tolerance, people do not have that much interest after a while. You get bored. Your mind is
Yeah.
like, okay, what's new? I mean, we accept that there's
Right, next.
pandemic. Next, what is
Next,
next?
right,
And you know
next.
what is next? Elon Musk took a side and chose a side on gun control debate. That's what's next.
But I think it's also the fact that people have just accepted that we will live with COVID now. So it's just a part of daily life. I think
And
that's
economy,
Yeah.
yeah, the full inflation.
Yes.
I think that's the
Okay.
one thing
Get
also
hard.
that Putin was relying on, the exact same thing for us to think about the Ukraine war and just move on. I mean,
Yeah.
he did
In
that with
Yeah.
fact,
Crimea. It
in fact,
became not
most of
important news anymore.
yeah, in fact, most of us did, right? Because we are not talking about that anymore on this stage.
We are
Well,
talking about it every day in that room.
Not here. Let's move
hey,
on,
Phil,
Tyler.
Not
Phil,
every
Phil,
day,
you
but
brought up
still.
You brought up a very good point about Russia because Russia's numbers were actually going up substantially before the invasion of the Ukraine.
Uh huh. Hold on. Somebody is.
Yeah,
Mike.
someone is
brushing their
in the
teeth.
restroom or what's happening?
Can I insert my three phase theory that applies to relationships and I think human fatigue as well? I always say first phase, it's idealism. You have a picture in your head of how it's going to be. Second phase, reality. You realize what it actually is. And the third phase is sustainability. You ask yourself, can I live like this? And will I continue on? So I find that's why usually after the third, you make a decision.
Okay, so fourth phase. Let's move on.
I do
Air
have a
horn
news
time.
about. Oh, are we already moving to tech news?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, already. We already blew the horn just now.
Oh, okay.
So I guess the Johnny Depp, and before we go into tech news, keeping it in the non-tech news for one more minute.
Okay, thank you. I do have non-tech news.
Okay, but the Amber Heard Johnny Depp
Oh,
case, the jury's
Oh,
now
what is that
deliberating.
case?
Is that what's happening right now?
Yep, that's what I think's happening right now.
Well, she's going to be found guilty, right?
guilty for
It's a
sure.
hot
Guilty
mess.
for
She's not.
sure.
It'll be really difficult for her to win this one, especially when the cross-examining, like the Johnny Depp's lawyer team has just been incredible. It's led by a woman. I think her name's Camilla. She's just,
You,
I don't know, but she's Spanish,
so,
but she's really doing a great
It's not
job at
just
like
the
pulling the
lawyer,
team together.
and
The
the way she's
I'm sorry,
lying.
what was that?
Amber Heard. I'm saying it's not just the lawyer. It's the way Amber Heard
No, it's
seems
their
to be
team.
like lying. The way she's lying.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the
She's there
problem, not
supporting
the
it.
lawyer. The way she is
Well, that alone,
on cross
Aram,
questioning.
that alone is gonna have her like. I mean, I think they even said that like Johnny Depp, if he does go back and sue her or something, she'll be left penniless because
the
you know.
question the
On top
question
of
that I
that, if
have
that is the
is
Her
case,
personal value is 8 million, and she's been sued for I think 50 million. So yeah,
Yeah, who is that,
the
Matt?
the, the question
Sorry.
that I was just chiming in, and maybe this is Tyler where Tyler's going, but why when I'm looking for tech news do I have to click on every website and learn more? I try not to, but learn more. I have to go. It's a paywall or a gate to get to content.
yeah.
And maybe it's really important in Hollywood. Maybe it's a distraction. I don't know, but it's been everywhere for the last 2 to 3 weeks, and it's I feel for the situation, but I don't think it should dominate news
Yeah.
or tech news
yeah.
for that matter.
Okay. Well, I
I was
yeah,
wondering whether
hold on,
last time.
Aaron. I
Sorry.
got two quick thoughts on this Johnny Depp thing that I've never heard anyone say. There's the normal points, that everybody's saying that Amber is not such a believable figure, and I've not seen anybody take her side generally, and I mean out of anybody, online or anywhere. So, but my thought is this whole court case stems from. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did it not? It came from a piece she wrote, uh, a public piece, right? I forget which publication, where she insinuates that she was the victim of abuse, what have
I
you.
think it was a report. I think she went to TMZ or something like that.
It
She
was it
went to
was
Yeah,
like
what
one of
they
the.
call an
TMZ.
op-ed. That's what
Yeah,
they've
Yeah,
been
wasn't it
referring to it as.
TMZ though?
an op-ed.
Yeah,
What
she
was the
wrote something,
publication?
and that's the problem. Yeah.
Right. Well, no. The problem is that she implied that she was being abused, and people naturally uh, assume she's referring to Johnny Depp, and that basically caused Johnny Depp to lose his career, essentially, right? And so that's why
Yes.
he's suing her, because the point is, you who else could you have been referring to? And first she was denying that she wrote it, and then she accidentally slipped up in her testimony and kind of confessed that she wrote it, and then even slipped up again and kind of alluded to the point was to damage his reputation. And she's been revealed as um,
A
a
narcissist.
narcissist.
That's
Yes,
really what it seems like. It
yes.
yeah, and it looks like Washington Post in December of 2018 on a
Okay,
quick
thank you.
search.
Now, here's the point. And she wrote it in 2018 during the Me Too movement. Yes?
Yes, this is a great point.
Right. Now, here, I know this is a very difficult point for some folks to listen to, which is how many people have gone down as a result of Me Too? Is it,
In Hollywood specifically,
well, no, just
because
the big,
Hollywood.
give me the, how many names, if we did a poll and we tried to put a list together, how long would that list be basically?
Is this a Tech News Jeopardy question? Because we got to get up on
We
Messy
need
if
Messi
you're
for this.
naming them all.
But I think Bill Cosby's at the top of the list. Weinstein is at
Kevin
the
Spacey,
Kevin
Bill
Spacey.
Burr, or whatever. Some of those comedians.
By the
There are a
way, by
tremendous
the
number of
way,
people.
by the way, Kevin Spacey was in the headlines yesterday, right? Did you see that? So
Yeah,
and
he got
Yeah.
indicted in England. Yeah.
Kevin Spacey, since we met last time, 21 hours ago, this kid broke out. Right after we finished last time, it broke that actor Kevin Spacey facing sexual assault three sexual assault charges. Now, here's what's interesting. Let's keep naming names. We got Cosby, right? We got what's the Weinstein guy's name?
Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein for sure.
Harvey.
Morgan
Yes.
Stanley?
But then you have Terry Richardson, the photographer.
Okay. I think that was a more minor
We
one.
could be here all day
I
naming
know.
names. That's how
No,
long
not
the
I
list
know.
is.
My
Terry
point is not
Richardson on
really.
that list.
No. My point is not really. Like, let's try and get to 20.
Okay, Les Moonves, the head of CBS.
Okay.
Okay.
Charlie
Um,
Wasn't there an
Rose.
anchor?
That's
Matt,
5,
was it Matt
Charlie
Lowry?
Rose. Charlie
6,
Rose.
Okay.
Bill
Matt Lauer.
Cosby.
Bill
Well, we
Riley.
already said Bill
Morgan
Cosby.
Stanley.
7,
Morgan
Not
Matt
Stanley.
listening,
Lauer.
I guess.
Are we only talking about early ones? Because the newest one's Elon.
Yeah, true.
Charlie
8,
Sheen.
9.
Russell Simmons got in trouble.
Oh, yeah, I know
Louis
that one really
C.K.
well.
Right?
Yeah,
10,
Louis C.K.
11.
Yeah.
I think we
Ooh, at
use the
Fox
hashtag
News.
Me Too on Twitter. We'll find entitled
The
list.
Let's
president
do
of
like
Fox
11 or
News,
12.
president of Fox News, right? Roger.
Roger
Ailes.
Ailes.
Yo,
Yeah.
Roger.
Tyler,
Okay,
I just
12.
got here. What are you counting up?
We're trying to
Okay,
get.
Tyler
Here's my point.
number.
Every prominent person who lost their job with Me Too. So it's
Okay,
like Roger Ailes,
201.
but beyond Roger Ailes, it was the
Can I
Bill
give you the
O'Reilly.
number?
Bill O'Reilly was also from
We're at
Fox News.
13 and 14.
Bill kept working.
201.
Bill O'Reilly, did he
15.
not lose his job as a result of like people petitioning his sponsors to kind of
No,
deplatform?
it was, well, I
Someone,
don't know how he lost it, but it was over sexual harassment.
You did put Johnny Depp on the list, right?
was it,
Yeah,
was it,
you
hold
This
on,
is
you
my
went.
point. This is
what
my
about
point.
Matt Lauer?
Now watch this. So of the
Tyler, there are
list,
201 men that
okay,
bought down.
okay,
201.
right.
They're
My
all
point
female.
is, if we spent 30 minutes on this, I think we would get to about 20, 25 names. Okay, would you grant me that?
Yep.
At least.
Absolutely.
Okay,
At a
so
minimum.
The total number is
yes, but
201.
right. But my point is, you would assume, given the nature of the campaign, that we would get into the hundreds, right?
Agreed.
Right.
But there
Agreed.
are hundreds, but most
Growing.
of them
Now,
weren't.
notice that the one of the first five names that was mentioned was Kevin Spacey, which in the past 21 hours just got 3 counts of sexual assault towards men, not women.
Oh,
Now, notice out of the top 10 big names, the Cosbys, the Weinsteins, Spacey's in the top 10, right? And his is towards men. And then Johnny Depp certainly was one of the high profile people that lost previously before this court case. Depp would have probably been in the top 10 or 20 list that we would put together. And it turns out not only is he not the what's the word I'm looking for?
Abuser.
Abuser, he's
He's the victim.
the victim in this.
So
That's
five females
that's
and
really fucked up. That's
You
really
know what's
fucked up.
even crazier? I don't know if you heard about this, Tyler, but uh, people from the Me Too movement have been calling Amber Heard. They've been calling her an imperfect victim. They
Well,
won't even call her an abuser. They're
What
calling
does
her an
that mean?
imperfect victim.
What
They're
does that
saying
mean?
that her actions towards Johnny were because of her victimhood.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay.
Well, here's the weird thing, and my guy friends, American guy friends, by the way, I have a small group of American guy friends who have every Americans are generally following this Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing, and a particular and strangely, you would think that this would be maybe women would be paying more attention to this trial, and it's I believe captured the interest of a lot of guys, and that was my point in my conversation with my male friends, and they said they're all uniquely uh, attracted to this drama, for lack of a better word, because they felt like they can empathize with Johnny Depp, meaning that we all agreed, interestingly, have all been in relationships with people that remind us of Amber Heard in some sense.
100%.
That is
You know,
unfortunately more common than anyone would care to admit or hope or whatever, and that's why watching this trial, and no, I've never heard it. This is my point. This is a point that I've not heard expressed, which is, what if this the Amber Heard like persona is not an anomaly, and that it's our I don't want to make this a male female issue, but there are a high. What I'm trying to get at is there's a high percentage of really kind of screwed up,
gender bias.
intelligently screwed up people. Like, she's obviously very intelligent, and very manipulative, and as you said, narcissistic, whatever. But when those people get into relationships, this is what happens. And it's have nothing to, it's not that it happens whether women get in relationships with men like this all the time. Men get in relationships with women like this all the time, and that therein lies my point, which is there's a surprising. You only realize how common it is for people to be screwed up once you start having multiple serious relationships.
Hey, Tyler,
Yes.
beyond Me Too, this is Robert. Um, there's any kind of movement like this, you tend to find situations like this where I'm going to say there's opportunists who latch onto it to their benefit that goes away from the original intent of the movement, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's you name it. We end up seeing this. There's always that long tail of the crazies.
You bring up a really good point on that, actually. I guess it's a sensitive topic and probably unpopular opinion. But I think it's definitely the time to kind of look at our own biases, right? And if you think about like true feminism in its classical form, it's more so about equality, not just boosting one side. And, frankly, I have a lot of male friends that have been in abusive situations in multiple forms. And it's an awkward thing to watch, right? Because when a man hits a woman, obviously people are going to react a certain way. But when a woman hits a man, it really kind of passes off. And I've seen it happen a lot. And you really question yourself, in a flip situation when a man is being abused by a woman, like what do they do, right? Just to be fair. So
Well,
that's
here
I
a good
agree
point.
the
with you,
thing is, and I
Pauline.
want to respond to you
I
directly,
agree with
Pauline,
Pauline.
as
I
someone who's
agree.
been abused, because the thing is, for men, and not only as someone who's been abused, I can attest to this for literally the overwhelming majority of my male friends.
Um,
Now, a lot of
Mike,
you know, no,
Michael, psychically, I know exactly where you're going, brother. We're on the same page.
yeah, a lot of you know me, and a lot of you know my job. I'm an actor. I'm a music artist. When my friends and I, also actors, guys who, they're six-figure dudes and all this kind of shit, we go to the clubs every single time. Every single one of us get our dicks grabbed, our asses grabbed, our chests grabbed, our stomachs rubbed on. Women literally will grab me by the dick and be like, "What's up, baby? Buy me a drink." Like, it's every fucking time. And as men, we can't say shit. We literally can't say shit because we're supposed to like that. Now, here's another crazy thing. I'm dead ass serious. We're
What?
supposed to like that kind of shit. And women are aggressive as fuck.
No,
Please.
Now, here's
no.
a crazy
Sorry,
thing.
Frank.
If you
Grab it by
go
the
if
dick.
you Yeah, if you go on Amazon.com right now, there's an actual book called How to Destroy a Man Now. And it's written by a woman with a psychology PhD. And this is what the back of it says. Want to destroy a man's reputation and remove him from power for misconduct? This handbook tells you how. And
That's evil.
literally in here's the crazy part. In the inside on the prologue of this book, she literally says women get their power since childhood from making up rumors about men to destroy them. This book will teach you how to spread rumors about men and
Please
take
stop
them down.
publicizing that book.
This is the
Yeah.
path that we're on right now, and this is a book that they're actually selling. And I'm telling you, there's a very big problem with this, and we're not, as men, we're not allowed to say anything about it. Really, we say something, it goes against everything. And here's another weird thing: every modern, I love traditional feminism, but every modern feminist that's ever argued with me will say we're equal, we're equal. And I'm like, do you believe in chivalry? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, well, that goes against everything you just said. You can't expect me to open doors, you can't expect me to pull out chairs, you can't expect me to pay the first bill if we're equal. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, if you want equality, you've got to have true equality. You can't go after that and then turn around and get upset. Like she was just like Pauline was just saying, when a woman is hitting you, which all women do. I'm a 6'3" athlete. Women hit me and they'll say, come on, fucker, what are you gonna do? What you gonna do? Hit me, hit me. Women get to do that because they've never dealt with the consequences. There's a reason that men don't go after each other when one of them says back the fuck off, because one of us is gonna try and knock the other out. Women have never had to truly, on a mass scale, have never had to truly face that kind of consequence. So they can hit the shit out of us and tempt the shit out of us and do everything they want because they know the second we swing back, it's over for us. And it's a ridiculous imbalance of power.
That's like
And I want to
so
throw
Or
one
toxic.
more
This
thing
is
in very
so
can I
Wow,
toxic.
you're
can I get in the
contrary.
queue
Can you
here? This
jump
is
on? Hey,
Arun.
Michael, one quick point there. Feminism and chivalry, those are not two polar opposites. I'm a feminist, and by that I mean that I've, accelerated in my career, etc. And I'm also accept chivalry, right? Those are so that that's the only place in there I want to make a
and
difference.
is
And the
this
psychological abuse that female engage in is not only directed towards males, because females are sometimes the worst enemy to have, because they are so good at spreading rumors and playing with your emotions if you don't realize that they're being your friend. And at the same time, some females are very good at that. So I have to admit that aspect of female toxic behaviors.
So I don't know if
Uh,
this is also existent in the other parts of the world, but this happened to my friend in Canada where they got so he was being abused. His girlfriend was hitting him. He had a black eye actually, but obviously they were yelling at each other. So the landlord called the police for a domestic violence call, and when the police came, they apparently by law that when they get called to a domestic violence like situation, they have to arrest somebody, and it's usually the guy just by default, even if she didn't want to press charges. They had to press charges on him, and he had to hire a lawyer and go through that. So
Yep.
it was
Yeah, the
crazy.
other, one more example. Sorry, on that one is also in America, and this is actually a while ago, probably a decade ago, but at least in the U.S., or at least in California, a lot of claims where companies have a zero tolerance rule. So actually, my brother lost his career because a girl made a claim against him, and the company doesn't investigate it. They just say we have a zero tolerance rule. You're out. So
Um,
Yeah, we
from
have similar
um,
cases. Yeah.
is that
If
Jennifer's cat, by the way? Was that someone's cat that I hear meowing in the background? I just heard a cat
that's
meowing.
my cat.
I
Yeah,
heard
there
it
was.
meowing. It's agreeing something. But can I
Cat
just share a
call.
little bit? Just want to share a little bit because I'm kind of completely getting what Michael and Jennifer and Tyler have said. In the context of the Dutch, it's very interesting because I have heard it straight from the horse's mouth. There was, as they would say, from the Dutchmen that are single on some of these apps, because they're very, very scared into staying where they are and not sort of really standing a ground. And I've actually seen it myself where like Dutch women really have gone toe to toe with them. And it's even scared me as a woman. I'm like, okay, that's really interesting. And it's really interesting to watch it because to Michael's point, it's like, what do they, what does the guy do? Because it's you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, what does the guy do? It's a bit of a
Call his
no-win
sister.
situation.
Well, even defending your.
Unless you bring your girlfriend, unless you bring your friend who's a girl and throw her in the mix, then now you have an equal fight. But the point is, and I don't mean to poke fun at it, but sometimes it's also looking at the light side to not sort of scream and try to decipher it all. But I really empathize and I feel for what Jennifer just shared, because people's livelihood are also at stake here. And to Michael's point, and I think Pauline as well, it's not just male female, it's also women on women and men on men. This happens, it's just in relationships. So I
Yeah.
think it's really about this sort of narcissistic, toxic behavior and a back forth, and not having the ability to do your own shadow work, your own dark work, so that you
Well,
can not bring it into the relationship.
Okay, can I
There's
may I
one.
say something? This is Irvin, and I'm gonna try to be really brief. When I was growing up and feminism was coming into its big creation, I realized that when I dated someone, and this was a conversation I would have with the female because I was raised to open the door and pull out the chair and do those things. But as this came along, the women that I asked out, I said, "This is who I am. I will pull out. I will when I come pick you up, I will open the door. When we go in, I will be the last one to sit, and I will pull your chair out. If you do not want me to do that, then let me know." It's about conversations. I'm sorry, Tyler, but we are all responsible. We're broke on both sides, male and females.
yeah.
This is not,
I'm not.
and
I said
and
that.
I just I
I tried to make that
I'm
clear.
triggered. I guess I'm triggered because I hear these men. Michael, I've been to the clubs, and when a woman goes out and most of the time touches the musician's penis, they don't have a problem with it. It's not an assault. I've been around musicians. I've done the club scene. I know what's going on. And yeah, women are abusive. And in my relationships, I tell the women that I date, I do not hit, and you do not hit me. It's a deal breaker. So we
But let me ask you,
guys,
Erwin.
like
Erwin, let me ask you something.
Arvin, but you're
Can
saying
I'd
Here's
like
my
to
something.
add
point.
something as
Let
well,
me ask
sir?
you,
Females
Erwin.
sometimes
Erwin,
don't
have
even.
you? When you're watching the Johnny Depp trial and the
I
Amber,
haven't.
that you
I
haven't
haven't
at all?
watched it.
Okay.
I haven't watched it because
Okay.
it's nonsense. These
Fair
are
enough.
two human
Hang
beings.
on a second. Let Tyler finish his point real quick.
Okay,
Go
my
ahead. Go
point
ahead.
is this: there's an outpouring, a unanimous wave of empathy towards Johnny Depp in this trial, and and no one's mentioning that. That's a really interesting result of this trial. That there's an almost, without exception, go on Twitter, you will read 1,000 tweets in a row expressing deep empathy for Johnny Depp in a row without a single
I want
tweet without a single tweet in the other direction.
What's your question to me, Tyler? What's the
Here's
question?
my question is, if because I think it's a false question. I believe anyone who's watched it for any period of time does the same naturally. They become one of those 1,000 people too. I did too. I start watching this and I'm like, oh man, I've been there. I've been in
You
his.
grab the popcorn.
I've been in his situation, and I know where this is going to go. And I believe a lot of people, regardless of gender, have been in this situation with somebody like Amber Heard, and that's why there's such an overwhelming outpouring of empathy for Johnny Depp in this trial. And my point is, it's a real screwed up and somewhat ironic, like disastrously ironic, that she used the Me Too movement to, now it appears, very narcissistically try and raise her own. Saw became opportunistic as narcissists are kind of prone to do, and use that moment or window of opportunity to promote herself in her career at the expense of Johnny. Which is, if you watch the trial, you understand that that's kind of her mo. But it's
Hey, Tyler, speaking of trial, I want to bring another trial, which is the Brock Turner and Judge Persky trial. And I bring that up not necessarily to discuss the man and the woman in the case, but rather the judge. Basically, the judge issued a ruling that was very, very lenient on the defendant, the Stanford student. And there was a recall effort, and he was recalled from the judgeship. And there was a lot of people actually that came out to speak on behalf of the judge, not because they were supporting the assault, the perpetrator, or against the victim in that case, but rather the judge himself, the ruling he made in that case was actually within the realm of judicial discretion as a trial judge. The thing about that is that he was actually successfully recalled. He lost his job as a judge, and more so after he lost his job, he went to become a tennis coach at a local high school. And when news of that broke out, the school fired him as a tennis coach. I believe it was a volunteer. So I raised that point to say that the sense of justice and fairness and really the legal process, where do we stand on those issues? It's one thing to discuss individual cases, but it's something quite another where we're actually attacking a judge, where presumably the judge did not violate the judicial conduct, if you will, but merely made a case decision that was not popular. And presumably, again, that discretion was part of our legal system. We're supposed to respect the legal process. When that's being attacked, I think it's an even bigger issue.
Well, yeah, but in that case, and I'm one that voted for that judge to be recalled. Um, and I'm not going to go through the case, but I mean, you had so many witnesses to what he did, and for him not to go to jail. So the system did work. The recall system worked. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it. And if we don't have recourse for certain judges, then you can continue to have these disparities. If you look at our history, there were plenty of times where we had plenty of bad judges who did bad things. So I applaud, which usually I don't applaud California for much, for having the ability to do recall, because what that gentleman did at Stanford was shameful, and he got off because that same judge put more people in jail for less, and not even putting that guy in jail for rape. It's
One thing,
horrible.
Tyler, about Johnny Depp also, and this is another issue that I brought up in my other podcast because it's an important one. Is fucking pretty privilege. Like, if Johnny was ugly as fuck, he wouldn't have as much support as he has right now, and people
Very
can
good
deny
point.
it.
If he looked like
But he was
Weinstein, he would
That's
be
but
People
he
can
happy.
was
deny it
also
all they want.
I
People,
disagree with that. I think it's
you
his
can disagree with it all you
popularity,
want. Let me
but
finish
I
my
think
point.
it's his
And
popularity from.
stop. Let me
Okay.
finish my point. Then you can talk. What I am saying is that it is a real thing and it is an obvious thing. Pretty privilege exists just like white privilege, just like tall privilege, just like all the other privileges. I am 6'3". There is exactly 3.8% of men who are 6'3". There is a reason that women call shorter men short kings, because most women, the majority of women, want men that are above 6 feet tall. That is a privilege I was born with. I'm not dumb. I know that that exists. There are all sorts of privileges, and you cannot deny the pretty privilege is a thing. You can dispute it. You can have your opinions on it, but the actual studies show that it is a thing. And if Johnny Depp wasn't as handsome as he is, and let's be real, he is, he would not have as much. He would still have support, but nowhere near as much as he does.
But my
I
my
have a
point was that
counterpoint
I'm sorry,
to
Wait,
my point.
Aram, if you don't
Annette,
mind.
Annette, and then
Yeah,
Ito.
yeah.
Um,
Can we let Annette
and
follow
it
through?
and at first, yeah.
My point is that Amber Heard also has that pretty privilege, and Johnny Depp has been popular since the 80s, and I think his popularity is what people want to believe him because they've been following him for the last 30 years and they loved him in his career, and people were upset that Disney was no longer making Pirate of the Caribbean movies. So it's not just the pretty factor here, because if we're going pretty, Amber Heard is definitely or was
Yeah.
She's
prettier
hot. You're
than
right.
he is.
Yeah.
It's his popularity, I think, that's caused it, and the desire to for him to come out on top.
Well, and also, and here's the thing: I don't disagree with you
Oh.
in that. That point is true. All I'm saying is that pretty privilege does exist, and that's the reason that people believed Amber in the first place. Johnny lost out on upwards of $700 million and
Facts.
future money because of what she lied about. and people just believed her off grip because of the poisoning in people's head. Believe all women, which is insane to say. You
Believe beautiful women.
what we should have been preaching
Yeah,
is
that's something.
what we should have been preaching is take accusations seriously, because none of this shit would have happened if men hadn't have been treating women like trash since the jump. The
But think
problem
about
is
it.
women
It's
used to come into the police station and say they were raped, and guys had a special filing cabinet for their complaints, the fucking trash can. If we would have been treating women's accusations with respect and taking them seriously from the beginning, we wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. And now there's been an overcorrection with crazy shit like believe all women. What we should have been saying is take every accusation seriously, because that is what is something that is both logical and respectful, and it doesn't create men who just end up being fucking cannon fodder. But I do agree with you on your point, Annette.
Michael, thank you. I agree with that part. If we had taken seriously from the get go, we would have less of what's going on now, because it has gone to the other side. It's gone to the dark side to some extent. So, because I definitely agree with that. Thanks.
May
You
Okay,
I
know,
Well,
share my
hopefully,
point?
thank
May
you,
I
hopefully we can go to
share
and we
my
have
tech
been
point?
talking
news.
about this
Okay,
topic
we'll
for
go to
half an
technical.
hour.
I'll
May
make
I
it.
share my
I got the
point?
perfect transition.
Okay, Tyler,
I have the
go.
perfect. I have the perfect transition back to tech. The transition is
Go
clearly
Korea to have your cosmetic surgery.
I
it.
had
No,
one last point.
it's okay. Hold that thought, Aaron. The perfect transition is the fact of the matter is there's a significant, unfortunately significant percentage of human beings who are garbage, who are narcissistic, evil, dark triad, whatever label you want to throw on it, right? Bad actors, to sum it up. And they are bad actors not just in the relationships that they're in, like Amber with Johnny, or or of course allegedly until the verdict is read, and we see a lot of them in the forms of people freaking out on airplanes, and we see them, in viral videos, in the hashtag Karen movement, or we just see people being bad actors generally, and it's an unfortunately decent number percentage of people, right? And they might be disproportionately beautiful people too. Kind of slightly touching on Michael's point. Now, my point is this: should we develop that we do have the means technologically to quarantine these people socially? Should we ex- use it? And by the way, Airbnb. This is precisely why Airbnb has the voting, the review and rating system for both parties in Airbnb, so that when you have these narcissistic dark triad people renting apartments, you don't want them renting apartments. So we need to have a rating and review people to identify them so they get weeded out of the ecosystem. That's why
so
it's there.
Tyler.
Now, my
A
question
few
is this.
years back,
Okay,
I
may I
actually was
Hold
share
working
my
on
on.
a
point?
Let
rating
me
app.
hold on, Annette. Let me
Go ahead.
just
Yes,
do
you're
the
fine.
punchline. The punchline is that, make no mistake, that's why Airbnb has that rating, because 2% of people are fucking psychopaths. And we need to weed them out of society and out of transactions. Should we acknowledge that fact and go big with that same concept and just build this rating system everywhere? Should there not be a an app? And I know there is. For whatever reason, they've never got that. Should Tinder allow people who go on dates to rate the other person and their dates? Should there be platforms? There are platforms to rate and review your employees, your school teachers, your should you be able to rate your previous partners, whether they be professional or romantic, etc., etc., so that these psychopaths no longer have a place to hide. That's the
So
question.
that was
See,
the point.
can
I
I make my
actually was
point now?
working on a
Oh my
project
God.
that was doing that with a dating site, and they dropped the project because they were so concerned about libel and lawsuits.
Okay.
Okay, Tyler, this was the point I was trying to make earlier. It's not about a pretty face. It's not about the gender or race. It's about certain personality types. And these personality types sometimes, I mean, they are undiagnosed, can have pathological dark triad related personality disorders. These personality disorders are prevalent among any race, gender, background, doesn't matter, all around the globe. And the lack of certain diagnoses, these people just live their life abusing people, treating them negatively, affecting their lives in such a damaging way, destroying their complete livelihood. And I personally can attest that pretty privilege is something Michael is saying is a positive thing. It can be extremely negative thing. It makes you a target. People come after you with vengeance because they hate you, they're jealous of you. They make you a target because they can't stand you for some reason or another, based in perhaps their own insecurities, and also based in these personality triads, perhaps in the uh, uh, guise of whatever
Right.
they are thinking. But sometimes I think my advocacy is for the mental health issue. These people, anybody suffering from these symptoms, exhibiting these symptoms, need to get diagnosis and treatment and proper rehabilitation.
Right.
Otherwise,
So,
yeah,
so where is the platform? Where's the AI that can identify psychopaths or sociopaths and say, hey, by the way, we don't want them in Clubhouse either necessarily. Could there not be a test, an AI test? I'm sure there is. I'm sure there are psychologists are familiar with tests to identify psychopaths and sociopaths. And then they answer the questions as they would, and then they get identified as that. And then I guess the issue is privacy. Or is this, uh, can they be, is there treatment? Is there recovery from this type of personality disorder, so that
Yeah.
you become conscious of the fact that you are clinically, have this this personality disorder, and you're working to deal with it, and et cetera, et
But
cetera.
part of
Yes,
it, Tyler, is like not having self-awareness and not being
right,
able to recognize that. So
right,
on the flip side, what I think is interesting is that Johnny was abused by his mother, and it's typically people who have been brought up in an abusive household that wind up becoming victims of this because they don't know how to stand up for themselves, and they fall into this trap, this cycle. So
Normalization.
it would be, I think, more beneficial to give
great point,
that person
great
the
point.
ability to recognize when someone has those traits so they can call them out. And then these people will wind up being shunned out of society because people are educated and they understand the behavior that they're dealing with, and they can call that behavior out instead of having, the idea of I can fix this, and repeating the cycle from their childhood.
Or
and I
people,
think anytime
I
there is
taught
like
a
these
graduate level personality disorder class at NYU for many years, and the hallmarks of these disorders is that A, as people are saying, people are not aware that they have it. They will deny that they have it. And B, they're incredibly hard to treat because they're
yeah.
hardwired into the person's personality. I did dialectical behavior therapy with individuals diagnosed with borderline personality for years. And there was hardly ever, unless the person really, really wants to work and their life is in enough pain, they won't do anything. Done.
And that is why I advocate for childhood related screening system, either in a school or regularly, just like you have your pediatric visits. Children needs to be evaluated and screened
I
for
read
such
that.
disorders from the beginning, because later on it becomes very hard to treat. Another point is anytime an adult is engaged in violent behavior, domestic abuse, I want them to get evaluated with a psychiatrist, not just being put in jail, because not only this person is exhibiting this behavior and he's sick, the children or the people that are exposed to this behavior, all of them have the potential to develop these issues later
right,
on. So we do need to screen these cases from the beginning, and
Fran,
even
yes,
as an
you got
adult
it.
needs.
Thank you, Aaron. When, Dr. Fran, how early is this detectable?
Usually in adolescence, because that's when personality really starts to be formed. So, these are learned behaviors.
Teenagers,
Yeah,
teenagers.
these are learned behaviors. So, like, I guess now because people mature quicker, it's probably earlier, but it becomes ingrained. Erin's absolutely right. We should be screening and doing things in primary grades.
Okay.
Tyler, wouldn't this go back to Freudianism, basically, that everything a child understands and sort of becomes part of their fiber is between the ages, like between 0 and 6 years old or 0 and 7 years old? I think that's what I took away from what Aram was sharing, that we need to be better at managing and understanding mental health and being aware of children are sponges. And as Annette said, Johnny Depp probably just didn't want to be, he just felt he probably felt that that was a way of her showing love as well, because he grew up in a family, in a household that he didn't understand it.
Right.
And maybe he just also assumed that that was the way that she was showing a form of affection, and he probably just didn't get it. But on a lighter note, just to give Michael a good laugh, and then I'm sure we'll go to check news, is we really have to look at the way that the judge is looking at Johnny Depp. The judge, the judge really does eye. She sees Amber Heard walk in the room, and it's like, meh. Johnny walks in the room, and it's like she's got hearts in her eyes. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
but we have to remember it's the jury that's going to make the verdict, right?
of course. But I was also just saying it as a tongue in cheek that the pretty privilege is both, the pretty privilege is both ways. I think Amber might have had it before, but I think now it's like flipping the script.
Swinging in
But
Johnny's
the
face.
reality,
I'm
exactly. But
curious
I think
if
it's
Amber had a good
Objectification
looking
is real.
had good looking lawyers, if that would change it at all.
well, actually, she has three lawyers, but they just seem to be like not both teams. I just see Johnny Depp's team as being more well prepared. Like I've worked for a law firm.
I
I've
think Amy,
I've
it's
seen
hard to
some serious
support
cases.
liars.
But
What was
It's
that?
also,
hard to
even
support
if you look
liars.
at their
What was that, Aram? Are you saying that I'm supporting liars?
No,
No,
she's
I'm
saying that
saying
it's
it's
hard.
hard.
The lawyers have a difficult job because they're supporting a liar.
Yeah.
Yes, got it. Thank you, Aram. I just didn't hear you over the other voices, so thank you for clarifying that.
The good news
But
is we should be able to hear the results of this before the end of Tech News today. So because they're deliberating, I
great.
predict.
Are we gonna pop? Are we gonna make it a after hours? Are we gonna make it like a happy hour or something now
Yeah,
on
maybe
this,
we
where
change
we'll
the
have a
title
bit
of
of
the room when it comes out, and then we do something really unique and turn it into a very non-techy room with a new title.
as long
Breaking
as
I've been
news.
Michael's gonna be
talking this
there.
the
As
whole
long as
time.
You know
Michael's gonna
what?
be there.
One of the things that I think is interesting. A lot of people have been talking about Amber Heard's witnesses and talking about the way they look. So I think it's a testament to Michael's point. Had Amber Heard had better looking witnesses, would that have changed the way people viewed her? Probably not. But also that Johnny had good looking witnesses. You know, the forensic psychologist was a beautiful woman, where the person who analyzed Johnny, the male, was torn
Mm,
apart on social media.
And
I think
no
beyond
amount
pretty
of makeup
privilege.
mm.
can cover the ugliness of someone's personality.
Well,
Sorry.
remember, women loved Jeffrey Dahmer.
I think beyond the pretty
Michael, take a
privilege,
look at the chat.
there's a
Women love
money
those scoundrels.
there's a money privilege as well. Imagine if Johnny Depp were a regular person with not a lot of resources. If the same thing had happened to that person, he probably would not have been able to put up such a stellar legal team to be able to pursue the case and clear his name in the public court with the broadcast like Johnny Depp was able to. So money does make
But
a
this,
difference.
yeah, Ben, this goes back to narcissistic abuse as well, because she's probably completely aware of this. I mean, this is a challenge, Ben. I mean, if this was like, if you look at the photos of her when she was with Elon Musk, they did bring up a piece of evidence that I found really telling, because Elon Musk is someone that's supporting her, which I find really interesting, because they posed three photos as evidence that they presented to the case. It was her and Elon Musk, and he he obviously they're claiming that she attacked or she hit Johnny Depp, which is what's happening, and that's part of the case. I'm kind of watching it every now and then on TikTok. It's a guilty pleasure. But the one thing that's interesting is when they look at the photos of Elon Musk with her, the three separate distinct photos, you will see a slight laceration on his right cheekbone, like as if he was smacked or hit a few times. Like, you really need to look at the photo carefully. And you have to see how her photos, where she claims she's been hit, her hair, she's doctored the photos because her hair is in the same exact place, same strand, same everything. So it's really recognizing the nuances of some of the evidence is really damning. And that's where I kind of think it's really like coming forward into light.
Tyler, can
Okay,
we get on to the tech news now?
here we go. CNBC says a Twitter shareholder sues Elon Musk and Twitter over the handling of the acquisition, saying that Musk engaged, quote, in conduct designed to create doubt about the deal. Since Musk's acquisition bid, Twitter's share price has dropped more than 12%, and Tesla is down about 28% as part of a broad sell-off in tech stocks. Now, this makes no sense at all, honestly, because Twitter would likely be down far, far more if not for Elon's acquisition bid. Twitter was being artificially spared the wrath that all of their brethren or sister tech stocks were suffering um, because of Elon's bid. So this guy, as a Twitter shareholder, this guy should be sending chocolates and roses to Elon Musk, as far as I'm concerned. Anywho, maybe it's a clever way to get verified.
Yeah,
The
Jasmine just
E-
posted in the chat that it's doing 12% better than other tech stocks.
yeah, the next one,
And by the way, Elon just tweeted that Jack is off the board, by the way.
right? That was another development as well. Yeah,
Yeah, tweet was jack off the board.
Yes.
Say that fast.
Very naughty.
he can't help himself with his humor.
That is so bad.
uh, the next is that Tether enters Latin America by launching the Mxnt stablecoin pegged to the Mexican peso, initially available on Ethereum, Tron, and Polygon blockchains. So Tether launches a new stablecoin pegged to the peso. There you go. Next, people from countries like Argentina, Venezuela, and Nigeria invested in Terra as they saw it as a more stable than their local currency, but lost thousands in savings. Quote, I have nothing left, not even a penny. Valeria makes around $300 a month selling prepared food from her home in Buenos Aires. That to me is the real tragedy of this. The
Pegs
next
don't work, and people need to remember when the Mexican peso was pegged to the dollar, and that collapsed in the 1990s. I mean, these pegs just never work. Period.
Kashmir Hill from the New York Times is writing again about facial recognition. And this, I've got some dirt. I know something you don't know. Interesting. So, many of you here in Tech News will know the name Charles Johnson, who used to join us every day. I just spoke to Charles again yesterday. Charles is a co-founder of one of the world's leading facial recognition platforms called Clearview AI, which is often in the news, by the way. It's most recently in the news because Ukraine is using it to identify Russian soldiers. That was a headline last week. And then they contact the parents of those Russian soldiers and say, hey, we killed your son. You can come pick him up. And you're being lied to. Your son was he came over here not for, a stag party or for or some kind of drinking party. He came over here to kill Ukrainians, and we killed him. And your government's lying to you, and you should probably help us get the word out to your country that your country is sending your sons and daughters over to our country to kill our sons and daughters. And so they're using Clearview. That was the headline last week. Now,
I thought the headline was they got fined for harvesting customer data or something. Didn't they just get fined £7.5 million in
The
the
UK.
UK or something?
in the UK, that was in the past 48 hours. That was
Yeah.
that was this week. Yeah. So, like I said, they're in the news very regularly. Now, many of you who've been tech newsers since the beginning will remember that the New York Times did a piece about Clearview, and they interviewed Charles about that piece. And the piece was really about Charles, actually. And do you remember the author of that piece? I do. Her name was Kashmir Hill. And Charles became quite friendly with Kashmir Hill because he had a lot of dirt on other companies that would be very useful kind of trade material for a journalist. So Kashmir Hill wrote surprisingly positively, considering she's with the New York Times, about Charles in that article. Now, Kashmir Hill from the New York Times is writing about today. The third or fourth biggest story of today is from Kashmir Hill from the New York Times that facial recognition service PimEyes, which is the Russian version of Clearview, is drawing scrutiny for charging high fees to help remove users' photos from their database, but allowing searches for other people's faces who don't pay. Now, how did Kashmir Hill find out about that, do you think? How did Kashmir Hill find out that Clearview's competitor is doing some shady shit? It's a real conundrum, that one. PimEyes is a paid service that finds photos of a person from across the internet. When they interviewed, they New York Times Kashmir wrote to them, and their response was, "We're just a tool provider," the owner said. There you go. So the next big story. Oh, I got to go back to my list. Here we go. She took to Twitter to say, for a story on paid facial recognition service called PimEyes, my colleagues graciously volunteered their faces to show just how alarmingly effective it can be in finding photos of someone on the internet. Yeah, these technologies are surprisingly accurate. And then that's the
And
debate.
everybody's doing it.
Yes. Well, the debate is, wouldn't you want them to be more and more and more accurate? The danger of them is that they're not accurate. Let that soak in. So,
Yeah, I'm not really sure you'll ever get a model that's accurate, but I will tell you that although they're definitely the scapegoats, there's many other companies who just basically aren't in the news who are scraping data off of Google, your photographs off Facebook, and just keep their mouth shut. But we're all building models off of Google data, so everybody's doing it. It's just their Clearview has obviously made too much news.
good point. So, the next story is about Microsoft. So, is Matt with us on stage? It'd be good to get Matt.
I'm here.
Okay, Matt, here you go. Hold on. Fasten your seatbelt.
Well,
Microsoft.
you called me a jerk yesterday in the opening, so
Did I?
you can't fall off the floor. No, you referenced jerks in the discussion.
Okay. Microsoft confirms it is developing an HDMI device codenamed Keystone that connects to any TV or monitor and offers Xbox game streaming through that HDMI dongle to that screen.
It's like the Chromecast with Stadia, but Microsoft's giving it a shot now. So we'll see how that works out. Although, at least when I tried it here in the Toronto area, the internet connection wasn't consistent enough, so you had rubber banding with the frame rate. So maybe Microsoft, if anyone could fix it, that would be really exciting. Because paying a few $100s for a console is quite the investment, especially now that the economy is tanking for most folks. So reducing the cost of entertainment is a good move for Microsoft, as they now have this huge catalog of game developers.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting here, and if I had any inside track, I probably wouldn't be speaking on this call. But if you start stitching the public, and I think I brought this up on previous calls, if you start looking at the way apps and app developers have historically been positioned or addressed by Microsoft, I think they made pretty good improvements. And I'm not here representing Microsoft, but what will happen in the industry, I think, if the Activision Blizzard deal goes through, is there's going to be some disruption to the only to games in town. And Tyler, you can correct me on this, or anybody in this room, but you kind of have to go through the gates of Google. You kind of have to go through the gates of Apple, and the development's been very, very happy with that. But I think this opens up a new channel that will bring more developers in, that will help populate real use cases around Web3, the metaverse. And so I think it's interesting from that point, because it's an iterative step to say, hey, just the way it was, just because it was the way it was, doesn't mean that's the way it's going to be in the future. And so I thought it was interesting because I think it falls within that swim lane of saying, okay, let's, from a gaming perspective, which is sort of iterative step one, what does that lead to in not just Microsoft and offerings and software, but what does that do to the entire ecosystem? And how do we get, not garbage in, garbage out, but we actually get some really new innovation coming through the app stores and build up that velocity around these, high-tech use cases that we're always talking in Horizon 2 or 3 or the art of the possible or whatever. So that's why I thought I'd share it with the room, and I'd love your feedback, Tyler, as well as everybody else on here. And who was speaking before? I'm sorry.
Eric.
Eric, okay. Thanks, Eric. Tyler, do you have a view on this?
There's another article coming up that it touches on. I'll jump to it in a minute. It's like 3 more articles ahead. But it's my big rant is anything, and I think Eric's point is a good one, that the games is the bridge to the metaverse, and so this technology seems like it's about games. It could just as easily be a Trojan horse towards the metaverse as well.
Well, I think what I'm hearing and reading and talking to customers is they want to gamify everything. So we
Right.
think, well, it's going to be the Xbox. And so, if Nicholas is on, Nicholas always talks about the micro, the macro, and incentives. I think, both at a global level, but also at a business level, if they can turn this into something where it's perceived as gamifying, there's a scoreboard, it kind of keeps people motivated with that carrot, less the stick. And if they can tie incentives to it, I think.
Did he cut out?
Yeah, he did.
Going to take a foothold. We'll see training and development, digital twins, and other things, but and those will be the realities from the metaverse. But I think the gaming topic or theme, is gaining a lot of traction with enterprises. It helps employee retention. It helps differentiate from the Great Resignation. It's landing in a couple of use cases. It probably won't be around for another 3 to 9 months, but I do see it as an emerging trend.
What I don't understand is this actually going to replace Xbox? Because it doesn't seem like it's much different than the existing console where you can stream games now. The only difference is that you can actually download games on the console and save your progress. But if you could do that all in the cloud, this seems like a place that you would just replace all Xbox devices.
I have a few thoughts
Honestly,
on this.
in my opinion, as a avid gamer, I would never, like, especially in tournaments. There's no way in hell I would trust playing off of anything other than a console, and that's only because I need to make sure that it's as stable as possible and that I have as close to zero lag as possible. Oftentimes in gaming, for the gamers out there, y'all already know that, but oftentimes in gaming, is particularly games like Fortnite, uh, and these types of games, it comes down to that millisecond, and
It's
if it's
totally about
off,
the lag. I get it,
yeah,
Michael, but
yeah.
but you're still streaming the game. You're playing live. You're playing in an MMO, so you're playing with other players through your device. If you could still do the same thing with the same device, if you're able to connect it directly instead of through Wi-Fi directly to a router, it's the same concept.
That's true. If it's
So,
directly
so,
through a router, yes.
so I think that there are a few things that are worth noting here. Number one is that they're using the HDMI cable. Sorry for the background noise. And the HDMI, the reason why they're doing this is that obviously they want to have some form of control and they must have patents in this space, I would have thought. Number one. Number two, the best way to deliver this is via USB, but there are other people who have the patents in that space, which is why they're probably going for the HDMI. The second thing is that they are going to move, obviously, to a streaming model. But the benefit of connecting with the television is that the television has the router, will come with Wi-Fi 6, probably 5G, etc.
But
And so
Nicholas,
it's a
the
way.
Xbox can connect with an HDMI cable as well.
Absolutely, but I'm saying that the point is that you don't need that expensive box. So, to whoever's point, I think it was Matt's, that it would make it a cheaper access point, much like a Roku makes for a cheaper access point. That's what they're probably looking to do. And then, as whoever noticed about the merger, will be saying they will be driving that to the cloud. So everyone knows that the box is going to be become much like the video player or the DVD player, legacy hardware. And the question is, can you miniaturize it? And can you then use that miniaturized dongle to ensure that you don't have the Netflix style problems of people sharing passwords, et cetera, et cetera. So you get the smallest unit of hardware that combines itself with the cloud in order for them to make sure that they can continue to monetize their intellectual property. And I know
Well,
about this because we own about 25 patents in this space, but our plan is to mutualize those with the world so that those patents can actually block moves like this. So that's something, if you want to look up Archetype Limited, you'll find a suite of patents that relate to this that we filed in 2007. So there are people that are consciously aware of what they're up to and trying to ensure that the public will have its version of that dongle, and it will cost less than $1 so that we can all participate in the future.
Well, I just think it's interesting if you look at the history in the last year of Xbox, they've lowered production rates. They've said that it's because of supply chain issues, but I'm curious if it's because they're just planning to remove the Xbox completely in the next 3 years and replace it with this streaming device.
For
Everything
folks
is about monetization and the ability to cut people off and stop them from accessing services without the authorization of the game creator. And that's perfectly reasonable. They're spending money on making these games, but they need to have that. That's what they desire.
But they
That's
have
why
that now with your login, right? If you log into Xbox, you can only log in on one device at any given point.
I think there will be many more controls that will come through that small dongle, including everything that's going to go alongside the metaverse: payments, authentication, cryptographic, test of user presence, OTPs, PKIs. There's going to be a lot of interfaces where a small device will be very useful to them.
Okay. Next topic is an investigation finds that Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft have launched a coordinated campaign in 31 states against data privacy legislation since 2021. Coordinated industry lobbying is overwhelming the scattered efforts of consumer groups and privacy-minded lawmakers. Take it away, Nicholas.
Yeah, that's
Well,
one where
I wanted to chime in on your privacy comments earlier around the quantified man that you were talking about, the quantified woman, and how you want to, drum bad actors out of society. And that's exactly what the social credit system in China is designed to do. So you're witnessing what is happening through the authoritarian state. The question is, how do we do that in the democracies in the world that we want to live in? And the only way you can do that, yet again, is self-sovereign identity plus social consensus. So if you interact with someone and they're always miserable and rude and awful, you will get a consensus of votes, and the voter will also be quantified. So you will know how much import to put on, Johnny come lately's, view of a restaurant versus, Anthony Bourdain's view of a restaurant. And so all of those things are what we would call mirror reciprocity. And that mirror reciprocity will be quantified, and people will be incentivized through this, and social consensus will come through this, which is exactly the reason why you need to be self-sovereign, because otherwise you're really entering into a new version of a credit agency for social behavior, hence the reason why in China they call it the social credit system.
And what to make of the fact that it's now been revealed that the big tech companies have collaborated to lobby against data privacy legislation.
Yeah, wait, Tyler, I'll jump on that. So, data privacy regulation, they absolutely do the lobbying, and GDPR has been to the huge benefit of Facebook and Google and the bigger companies, even if they're getting these minor fines because it's extremely difficult to comply with. But in the U.S., they are lobbying again here. But the problem is right now is that right now we have state by state legislation, which is extremely challenging because they're similar but different. And so for companies to comply, and by definition, if you're online, you're crossing state borders. So you have state by state, and as well as different substantive tiers. So if SEC can come after you, FTC can come after you if it's unfair and deceptive. So of course they're lobbying, and banks have been lobbying because they would like coherent legislation that they can comply with. But just because they're lobbying doesn't necessarily make it bad. I mean, it's kind of a shit show over here right now.
So look
Okay.
at the dichotomy. So Jennifer makes great points. Look at the dichotomy that you've got is that if you were to have a full privacy technology, which, like ours, you could have, so that you had zero knowledge proof, so that you could prove anything to, cryptographically that would be provable yet private. But the problem is that that technology they don't want you to have in payments, but they do want you to have in social, right? Because of all the monitoring that goes on and all of the work that goes on. So ultimately, the real problem is there is going to be this new thing that is going to give the superpower to people to be fully private yet fully provable with their information, that is going to enable them A, to monetize, B, to make payments privately, and C, to stop the surveillance capitalists. The surveillance capitalists, in conjunction with the government, will do everything they can to lock themselves in place because they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. And their shareholders are in the business of surveillance capitalism. 95% of Google's income comes from advertising, which is based on total surveillance. And that total surveillance is therefore available, as I think as someone said before, so that politicians and everyone else can crawl that data. I also wanted to make the point, Tyler, with regard to Charles, is that it is contested that he is the founder of Clearview. There is an argument about that, and I was wondering why the article was so, lacking in color on that. Plus, he is also a right-wing polemicist, and you should look at his writing to know the direction of the surveillance that he was potentially interested in. I just say this to condition people to not just take things at face value.
So in this particular article, the point that gets raised is that the type of lobbying that they're doing specifically, or legislation that they're working to lobby on, is how it would prohibit consumers from bringing lawsuits against big tech companies when laws are violated, and also narrowly defining the selling of data, and require consumers to opt out of data collection, etc. So it's just tilting the board in its favor on every dimension.
That's a lot there, Tyler. That's a lot. There's a lot to do. And as you brought up before, here we've talked about that John Oliver skit that went over this stuff pretty well. That was hilarious. There's a lot of gray areas in data being captured, tracked, the data brokers selling it. Where's your data? But allowing individual consumers to bring actions is a shit show. I mean, you would just be buried. That's why we don't have,
Right.
for a lot of these state laws, they don't allow that. And we're going to see this come a little bit more forefront this summer when GDPR allows areas, locales, sort of kind of akin to nonprofits. So they're moving a little bit towards class actions because they, rather than the government, each of the various governments enforcing it, to give a little bit more power to the consumer. But it would be class actions and plaintiff lawsuits can be a real shit show. And this used to happen back in maybe 10 years ago when people were bringing claims against Facebook that Facebook did something, but there's no damage. So I knew one of the appellate judges here in the Ninth Circuit, and he would dismiss them. He's like, yeah, that Facebook did do that, but where is your damage? Which is, people don't seem to understand is
I think the
also.
damage is called Uvalde. That's where they're going to make the connection. They're going to, like someone said the other day, in the same way we made the connection to cigarettes late, but now you can't even advertise them. They're going to make the connection, and they're going to make the connection between mental health and misinformation and disinformation. And I think that's where the nexus will be.
But didn't they just pass the law, Tyler? I think we went over this a few days ago,
Yeah.
where parents will be able to sue for their on behalf of their children for
If their
mental health
children are,
issues.
if their children are addicted, yeah.
in Texas.
It's all coming back to self-sovereignty, because that's what eventually the companies will have to say, you need to take responsibility for
Right.
yourself, you need to be self-sovereign, and then we will provide you with services, which is sort of towards the dongle effect, right? It's like, we will service you, but you are in control. So eventually, once we go through the cycle, first we have to, find the scapegoat, then we have to throw the scapegoat off the mountain, and then we have to resolve that we all feel better now. We've got rid of this pernicious force, but in reality, we have to be ready for the new thing, which is going to require education and some knowledge and collective value.
Okay. And then, Nicholas, you chose a great day to join us. This next one is an interesting one. Uh, Washington Post. It says young gunmen are using private and disappearing messages in apps like Snapchat, Instagram, Discord, and Yubo to share violent plans, evading content moderation.
Yep, that's the other piece of it, is that all of these lies that are coming up about privacy coins and private transactions just are straw man arguments, because anyone who knows how to use the internet can make sure that they are far enough ahead of the adversary that they can't be tracked anyway. What we need is social cohesion, whereby we don't have the social problems, because we are using the quantified data to help people who are in abusive homes, to support families that need the assistance, and to better allocate our resources through electing better leaders and evolving democracy through this technology, rather than pretending that these new technologies are posing some new threat. It's just bullshit.
Well,
Tyler, are
Nicholas,
you
I got a
are,
question for you, Nicholas, real quick. This is Jason. So the WF is literally speaking this week, and they're talking about new forms of medication that literally read your biometric data and give it, allow it to be held by a company. How does that self sovereignty work when pharmaceutical companies are using this new technology to basically track every human that takes their medication?
So I saw that, and I'm always wary around this sort of whole sort of the conspiratorial side of this. So I want to say I don't think there's a conspiracy. I think this is, like everything else, an unintended consequence of not thinking hard enough. Again, the way that self-sovereign identity and privacy technologies, zero knowledge proofs, can work together is that what you enable is that you can attest to the information, but they don't get to store it. So you can be compliant with requirements for vaccination or for whatever information, but that there is no central repository that stores that data, and that you have control over the monetization completely through your opting in, etc. We do also need to notice that 23andMe is doing exactly this right now, and reselling your data, the 300 questions that you filled out to get your test, by mirroring back to you what you told them in a better design format, and then mining all your data and selling it to pharmaceutical companies. That is their business model. So I mean, they pretend it's like a retail product, but it's not. So all these things, we have to remove the scales from our eyes, and we have to realize that we're going to have to take responsibility, and we're going to have to realize that the way we evolve is through democracy, and that's really our only hope in a world of total surveillance and massive asymmetry of violent power. So we have to unify amongst each other. That's the promise of the collective. That's the promise of the blockchain and cryptography, is the ability to keep secrets and have trustless network economies instead of network effects. You can think of a nation state as a prototypical network effect. A meta network, a meta nation would be Facebook, but that's a private nation. What we need is public meta networks that gives us this opportunity to own our collective value through the ability to share private yet provable data.
Oh,
this
Nicholas,
just
you have a twins
reminded
on
me.
stage now. I want to ask a question to Nicholas, if you don't mind. Like, for layman's term, right? For this case in the pandemic, well, the vaccine passport thing, right? That when you need, that you need when you travel. So, how is that going to be implemented on various? If
So
you have
very
one
simply,
opinion.
it's an attestation framework. So you will have taken your vaccine. You will be able to, whoever administered that, CVS, for example, in the US, will be able to effectively sign that and give you an attestation that you took the vaccine on this day, that day, and the other day. And then CVS is effectively proving that, and that they don't get to keep the information. They're just signing that you in fact did have your vaccine. Then you're storing a cryptographic proof that is not linked to you in any way that could be traceable. And the data is not residing on any centralized server. It is on a ledger. That ledger is public and maintained by the community of individuals so that we can all trust that ledger is true. That's what it's about. The blockchain is a ledger of truth that is not maintained by a government and not maintained by a company, but maintained by the network. And it needs an economy because there is a computational cost to storing those proofs. And so that's why Bitcoin is not the right one, and that's why Ethereum is not the right one, because they're too expensive to save every tiny fractal of data. It needs to be a very efficient proof, and ideally, it should be available to everyone to be able to provide that, which is why you want it on a CPU, which is in even a RockPi or an Android mobile phone or any other smallest unit of computing power. And if you can do that, you resolve all of these problems that we discuss every day.
Does this mean that every country, every customs all around the world have to be on board on this idea?
No, it just means that you need to be able to download the software onto your computer and to start participating.
Yeah.
And anyone can notarize information if they're the duly authorized authority. So CVS or anyone else, or you could take it to a notary, just in the same way that any piece of information in the US can be notarized by a notary public. It's just
Yeah.
the idea, think about that idea of evolving that, and people will provide notary services. And that's, a good economic business for, trusted counterparties. And so
And the
it's
chain will
not it's
use a
not very
piece of
complicated.
storage from every hardware available that has it downloaded in order to store the information.
Everyone who has the software is
Yeah,
running
so my,
the
my real
protocol to
question is,
provide the
right, why
hashing.
would the international customs be, I mean, you have to convince all countries to get to engage on this, right? Because if
No, you
not,
don't.
how would they be
No, you
allowed to
don't.
get into the
No, you don't.
country?
Because a notary can notarize information. If I bring my vaccine passport to a notary, I can have it notarized that I've taken my vaccine. So
But it
there's an
doesn't confirm
economic.
that the information is accurate. It just confirms that it's notarized.
Correct. And so you will want it to come from those who have the most interest in getting compliance. So the government can adopt, but you can have many third parties that are trusted. For example, an auditor, a PwC. There are many groups, even even groups like FIDO or anyone else who provide those services and will provide those services. So whilst it would be great if people would adopt at the nation state level, humans will provide capabilities, and there will be service providers who will say, I should provide my signature because I'm a trusted counterparty. The way that you should think about it is that when people sign into a banking service, they're using Plaid. Well, Plaid is providing a signature because you're logging in. When you log into, say, one of these accounting, or if you log into one of these other services, you're really connecting to your bank account, and there is a certificate that's coming over from one service to the other that is saying, now you're connecting to Plaid, now you're logging into your bank details, and here is your banking information. And in fact, when you're in the lending business, that's exactly how the lender enables them to garnish your wages, if you're into that type of lending, where they can see your payment has landed before it's in your account, and they draw your funds owing before you even see them. So all of these things exist. They are all using effectively a cryptographic proof, but that cryptographic proof is owned by those private companies in order that they can get the benefit of that information. So
Nicholas, am I
in order
right in
to
saying that like is to understand the whole concept for everybody to it's like pretty much along the lines of NFT. So it's like, you authenticate and
yeah,
this you own the picture. So I mean
if
that
you understand
yeah.
NFTs are like dumb identities. An NFT is not very smart, but a self-sovereign identity that has revocation and recovery facilities, it has vaults, it has the ability to vest and to never lose your private keys, is a super powerful NFT. That's exactly the way to think of it. And you could have any identity you want, a pseudonym, or your real name, etc. And then you would be like an autograph book, like you do in your life. And you walk around, your consciousness hashes your experiences to your memory, right? That's what it's doing. It's cryptographically storing them in time and space. Of, I'm currently in the Ramble in New York, and all my memories are hashed to that, time and space point. I was on this phone. There's someone walking behind me. That I'm in this spot. So you have these signatures, but only you hash your consciousness, and only you can prove your unique memories.
So it's
When
a
you move
smart,
into a
smart
digital
contract.
quantifier, so it's not a smart contract because smart contracts exist in a derivative format of cryptography. A smart transaction combines security and identity, and between the two of them, you have real composability, because you may want to be attached to various different things and be evident to different people with different names, etc. But you yourself cohere all the information, just like you cohere your consciousness into, unless you're, multi-personalities, in which case you don't have a cohering consciousness, you have multiple different consciousness. But just imagine that you're not a schizophrenic and that you have one digital consciousness in the quantified man scenario. You will want to own that identity, and you will want to make sure it's not controlled by a government or a company. And so, yes, it's like an NFT because an ID is a unique identifier. I can tell you there are many Nicholas Lyonses out there, for example. So I can't use my real name to be unique because I couldn't even get it on Twitter, right? Or I got it on Google and whatever. But, ultimately, that's what you need to think. Name is not unique on its own. You need name plus your consciousness, your digital consciousness, your digital life. And that's where we're going. And you will
Like your
want
social
that to be
security
fully
number.
private. But your social security number is the public key, right? You would want to be able to control all of that. Your social security number will be part of your identity, for example, but it's not going to be your identity. It needs to be private and owned by you, and you choose what attestations you want to get. So if you want support of the state, you will provide them with your IRS returns, which are going to be API-able very soon, right? If you want support for a single child credit, a single parent credit, you will provide support of the document of your decree nisi from your divorce. And each of those documents, and in that case, it will be signed by your lawyer, which would be an acceptable attestation authority, because that's how the whole world works. It works through contract, and contract works only if it is signed by the duly authorized signature. As we always say, I could have a contract to buy your house for $1, but if you don't sign it and I don't sign it and it doesn't have the title attached, which is the correct title, nothing's happening anyway. So that's the critical thing to understand. Identity plus cryptography, which is security of a digital ledger that is owned by, of, and for the people, is the business model that allows us to get rid of the surveillance capitalists and to fight back against the surveillance state and to imbue in the entirety of society with civil liberties and human rights. And we have been agitating for a digital declaration of independence, because that is what takes us meta to the bullshit politicians and the bullshit corporations and their bullshit leaders, right? So that we can realize that the average Chinaman and the average Russian and the average Ukrainian have got nothing against each other. These are just narratives of misinformation and disinformation which alienate everyone and effectively remove the middle in society. And then you get extremes that drive polarization and destroy the cohesion of the nation. What we need to realize is that we should, understand that most people want the same things we do. And if we can prove that, we will change our current situation.
Okay, Nicholas, we must then mention the headline that broke shortly after we wrapped yesterday, which was that Ethereum co-founder Vitalik says we will soon use soul-bound tokens to verify things like school and employment, all stored in a soul's wallet. Vitalik Buterin proposed the soul-bound tokens as a Web3 credential of the future. And I pinned to the top of the room here. It says your whole identity will soon live in a soul-bound tokens on Web3, Ethereum's co-founder says. And then
It's
he,
obviously nonsense because you need identity at the protocol level and it has to be issued by the blockchain directly. Everything that sits on layer 2 of Ethereum is insecure. All of the smart contracts are insecure. They do not offer you root cryptographic proofs. They offer you derivative multi-signatures and other derivative proofs that are not suitable and they're not even enterprise grade, let alone, democracy grade. You need to have an identity issued by the blockchain itself, and that needs to be fully fractal. The ERC20 token environment is a securities environment. It is not root cryptography with the protections of free speech and with the protections of Fourth Amendment privacy and with other protections that exist in the democracy. We have to be able to fight these at the Supreme Court. And if you're a token, you do not have anything that is, a utility. It's all speculation.
are you saying that
Hey,
NFTs can be stolen, Nicholas?
it's Corey. There's an update here, guys. Just yesterday.
My point is, I assume then that you perceive Vitalik Buterin's headlines yesterday as great news in that he's doing the difficult work of popularizing the concept, but won't have the sufficient protocol to.
Well, the
Hey,
question
Tyler.
is he gonna
They partnered with
gaslight
somebody that
everyone?
does provide this. So Polygon partnered with a company called Partizio Blockchain, which does MPC cryptographic computation on layer one solution. So I believe Vitalik is using that. And even though the headline says one thing, I think underneath that partnership that was announced between Polygon and Partizio Blockchain is what's going to provide that capability. So you can
Polygon's
look
not a
into
public
that.
blockchain. You have to be a public blockchain. That means no VCs, no ICOs, no one owning a giant chunk. Why? Because we know the Pareto principle and the Cantillon effect means that if you start with 20% of a blockchain in the hands of VCs, because the rich get richer, they will just end up taking over the chain and they will make all the money and we'll be back to where we started. It has to be truly decentralized. It has to not be funded by VCs, no ICOs, no securities offerings, and it must also, in the case of everything that's related to proof of stake is just the same as centralized companies. The companies are staking their money into Facebook. Proof of stake is the same thing. The rich will get richer. The issue here, and people are being led astray in terms of the computational cost, but the proof of stake is not going to stand up to the scrutiny of the law because it will say, what is the difference between staking a blockchain and staking a company? And they'll say absolutely nothing if it's based on money, and therefore it will fall under many different jurisdictions other than free speech. Free open source software is the only way we will liberate ourselves.
Okay, so in that sense, you are welcoming him educating the masses.
If want Bernie Madoff educating you about investments, yes, he will persuade a lot of people, but ultimately you will lose your freedom. So whilst there are
So
many
here's the
charlatans
strategy,
out there,
Nicholas. Let me help you with the strategy. Every conference that Vitalik gets invited to speak at, you must then send an email to the event organizer and offer to pay to debate him on stage, and then of course you raise a fund that enables you to pay those fees.
Oh,
it's interesting you say that. We will be at Consensus from June the 8th until the 13th. So if anyone would like to visit us, we will be at the Consensus conference. And we don't see an enmity with Ethereum. I don't think Vitalik is a bad actor. I just think he's young and he is a genius and he's got many genius qualities, but he's built a sandbox for experimentation that is not necessarily the right solution. The problem is he's got partners in JP Morgan and Joe Lubin and Mike Novogratz who are never going to allow him to, jettison his platform because he's got a lot of good developers there as well. What we are saying is we could be an off-ramp for Ethereum developers and a way that you can keep the value of Ethereum but move to a system that is truly decentralized. So we are going to be there, and I don't see him as an enemy. I see him as, just not yet understanding, the limitations of his design. And many people point out the limitations of the virtual machine. It's not computationally efficient, and he's going to move into areas where he's going to run into legal problems, which Gary Gensler has flagged with him earlier and with Joe Lubin. What I think that they're planning on doing is using Joe and using JP Morgan to try to influence the SEC and to influence Gary Gensler. And Goldman, similarly, who've advocated for Ethereum, as Gary Gensler is an ex-Goldmanite, I would suggest that they will be putting a lot of pressure to not be classified as a security when they move to proof of stake. Gary Gensler did, however, warn them that he would be open to changing their status. I think all of their fundraising has been to protect them from this through the entrenched market forces. So that's just an opinion, but look at who's the hand rocking the cradle. He's in the cradle, he's a smart baby, but the people rocking it have got a lot more experience.
Are you calling in today from Twitter headquarters? Because I'm hearing a lot of tweets in the background.
I am in the Ramble, which is New York's tweet central.
Nicholas, can you repeat your dates and venue again? Just now it was not clear.
We're going to be at Consensus in Austin, which is the Ethereum conference, between June 8th and 13th. And you can visit us at the rooftop at the Fairmont Austin and come and meet the community. And this is the first time a lot of us have even met each other. I mean, some of them I've met in real life, but a lot of the community I've never met. We have 13,000 people and a lot of people who are working, and a lot of them have pseudonyms, so I don't even know their real names, but we will all get to meet each other in a week or two.
That sounds so cool. Is there a link that you could share or anything like that?
Yeah, if you go to the Verus.io website, Verus.io website, you can join the Discord, and there's invitations, and you can sign up for a whole bunch of things that we're doing. And this is really our sort of coming out event where we're starting to meet each other and meet other people that are interested in changing the way that the world works.
If you
That's awesome.
if you go to Coindesk.com, you'll see the conference. So they're the kind of the main engine behind the conference. So the next story is from Sifted out of Europe. It says that they have done a report about the gender breakdown of European GPs, that's general partners, behind VC firms, and only 15% of GPs at European VCs are women, managing just 9% of total assets. In the UK, 13% of GPs are women, managing 5% of total assets. The next one's from the New York Times. They say they have sources that Substack dropped efforts to raise money after talks to raise about $100 million at a $1 billion valuation, during which the company said 2021 revenue was about $9 million. Probably the other, depending on, I can see how they would be glad they didn't do that. Amid an industry-wide downturn, venture investors are preaching austerity and halting new deals, particularly for companies that have spent aggressively on growth. Yes, all true. Next, Jadu, which is developing an AR game. There it is, an AR game built around virtual objects owned by the players in a metaverse. Did I not say that this is how it was going to happen? Raises $36 million by Bain Capital Crypto. An AR game built around virtual objects owned by the players just raised $36 million to help create the Web3 definitive AR and gaming platform. Oh, it's in one sentence now. AR and gaming. The metaverse, and it's a metaverse game. It's a gaming metaverse. Which is it? You put your chocolate in my peanut butter. You put your peanut butter in my chocolate. No, this is how it's going to unfold. The games are what's going to not Mark Zuckerberg spending, and he, by the way, Zuckerberg just felt compelled to put out a statement in the past 24 hours to remind Facebook investors that Facebook's going to be losing money by investing substantially in the metaverse over the next 5 years. I have news for you. That's one approach to trying to take over and establish and build the metaverse. Another is all of these game companies just keep doing what they're doing and adding on incrementally a whole ecosystem, and I think Zuck's going to be fucked. But anyway, yeah, it's all of
Hey,
this.
hey Tyler, do you know what? If Facebook announced that they were either just going to even just slow the spending on Meta, never mind just kill it, just slow it, and use some of that money to pay an increased dividend, the stock would go up a lot, as opposed to the stock getting killed.
He's been a hard, adamant advocate, evangelist of the metaverse before it even. I mean, going back to the first time he used Oculus, it's like he's been very singular in his adamant, approach that that's the future, and he wants
It's
to.
Yeah,
just
but
weird how shockingly
Evan
bad it
Spiegel
is.
might be right though. That's the problem.
It's weird how shockingly
Shorter.
bad it is though, Tyler. Like
No,
his version of a metaverse is so terrible.
I get it. I agree.
Like there's so many better metaverses that already exist, and I just cannot understand how they did such a shit job. Like I never enjoy myself when I run his beta, and it's weird because
Get it.
there are other metaverses that I hang out in and could live in them. Like I have lived in them. I've stayed in metaverses literally for 8 hours at a time and had an excellent time. But even the thought of his metaverse just makes me want to vomit.
Yeah, like the jankiness, I think, of other platforms kind of gives them a charm, and here the professional polish leaves very little interaction or texture. I remember when YouTube was first starting up, there was a lot of talk about the texture and the culture, and it just feels like plain vanilla on Facebook's metaverse. So it's unfortunate.
Okay. Next up, a Poland-based company called No Magic, which makes pick and place warehouse robots, raises $22 million, led by Coastal Ventures and the European Investment Bank. Robotics are playing a growing role in the world of e-commerce, logistics, and fulfillment. AKA, they're taking over the jobs of the Amazon industrial athletes working at your local warehouse. And now the European Investment Bank is backing up the truck on a Polish pick and place warehouse robot. Only a matter of time. Can we have a revolution in the metaverse with the burning pitchforks? By the way, that Michael, have you been to that metaverse yet, where the Amazon warehouse employees trying to stage a coup in the metaverse?
No, I haven't.
The next one,
That's crazy.
can you do a coup in the metaverse?
Well, there's places where people are making money now. There's casinos that people hang out in. My favorite metaverses so far aren't even truly, and this is what's beautiful about this particular style of game culture. So you look at older games, and what came before them, like 3D games. I remember the very first fully 3D game, and of course, PlayStation 1 and 2 had attempts, but I'm talking about platformer, and that was Mario 64. With the advent of Mario 64 and the N64, that was our first time truly understanding how to move in 3D space, but we were still in third person. What's so fun about what's happening with VR is now we're learning how to move in 3D space in first person, even though we're already in 3D space, and finding different methods of locomotion and figuring out how to interact with people. The reason that it's so fun is because just the very act of doing such a thing. For example, let's say I will use as an example Top Golf. No, in fact, I'll use. There's another awesome golf game called Walkabout Mini Golf. Um, in Walkabout Mini Golf, there these worlds that they build for you to mini golf with random strangers in. Half the time, You end up looking for lost balls together. I mean, they place balls like collectible balls all over the courses and whatnot. You end up just talking and chatting and hanging out with a group of four random strangers, and it's just because of the way it's designed. Like you guys end up having somewhat of a kinship. I used to. There was there's another one called Big Screen. If any of you do have Oculus, there's one called Big Screen where you can go into you can go out in the woods. It'll be nighttime. You can go out in the woods and sit around a campfire and watch movies on a outdoor movie theater screen. And people are sitting on virtual logs having their own conversations. Someone might come over because they overheard you talking about something. You can sit in penthouses, on rooftops, at a pool. I used to do a rooftop pool therapy kind of deal where people would come in and ask me questions, and I would give them my opinions on how to deal with things in their lives. That's not what this was designed for. It was designed to just watch a damn movie on a big theater screen. But because of what it actually is, it allows itself conveniently to become whatever the users decide it is. And that's really the beautiful part about it. And if you as a developer see what people start using it for versus what you designed it to be used for, and you lean into that, you can create something truly special. And I really think that's where metaverses really start to shine, is when you're paying attention to how people choose to interact with your creation versus how you wanted them to interact with it. And then you lean into that and develop that out. That's really where you start to find like what something truly is.
I want to agree with Michael, but also add one point, which is that I think that in future, people will look at the word the metaverse in the same way as they refer to the World Wide Web. And, it just became the internet. The metaverse is really just the
One
branding
thing.
for the next version of the web. And that's why, to tie it back to the story, why Mark Zuckerberg, who is a smart guy, despite his, fuck Zuck, the whole thing, right? He's so smart that he knows what's going on, and that's why his move is to spend 10 billion to tell them he is going to do that. And even if he could pay the dividend short term, he doesn't care because he controls the whole thing anyway. And he's got plenty of money, and ultimately, the future of the web is going to be volumetric, and his investment in Oculus is akin to Steve Jobs and the iPhone. So I think that, and obviously that's why Apple are moving towards the glasses and everything else, right? Is that the next version of the web is the volumetric web, which is exactly what Michael is saying, is that you are inhabiting that 3D space. And so think of it as the evolution of the internet, not as just this new thing. It's the embodied volumetric version, next version of the web, which is why people don't like to use Web 3, because that's an Ethereum thing. It's, the next iteration.
Okay. So the next story is New York-based company called Parallel Learning, a telehealth service focused on students with learning challenges. Raises $20 million from Tiger Global. If a kid is having trouble at school, one of the standard steps is to schedule an assessment for conditions like dyslexia, ADHD, or anything else that might require a special approach. Like being a psychopath. So I like this parallel learning telehealth service for students with learning challenges, especially if they loop in the psychopaths and cut them off, get them the professional help they need before they start to feel that their disorder is a strategic advantage. So the next one is that Instacart plans to slow hiring as it prepares for an IPO.
Hang on a second, Tyler.
Sure.
So children who does bad in school, that they're psychopaths. I think that normally people who are psychopaths do quite well in school. So, do they make that connection in the article? I'm quite curious
Susie,
to from that.
your statement makes it abundantly clear you were not here for the first 20 minutes of tech news today.
I am so sorry about that. I will read the article and learn more.
All right. So the next one is that Instacart plans to slow hiring as it prepares for its IPO after hiring over 1,500 staff in 2021. Okay, yeah, they got to get all the ducks in a row before the IPO. The next is that a Brazilian e-commerce startup called Vtex is cutting a bunch of jobs. Yeah, who cares? Dell did their quarter report. Who cares? Here's a great one and a chance to play our favorite game. This is from the Washington Post, and they have some data, and the source of the data is Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch found that some percentage of the remote learning apps, they surveyed 164 different remote learning apps that were used during the pandemic in 49 different countries. The question is, dear Tech Newsers, and I have the audio effect ready. Where are you? Tech News Jeopardy, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do this. Here we go. Messi's not here, so everyone has a chance to win today. This should be interesting. And where's... I can barely hear it. Hold on.
Who is Megatron?
No. Here we go.
Goddamn.
Human Rights Watch found that what percent of 160 remote learning apps shared from the students with data marketers and data brokers?
98.
90%.
96.
64.
I really want to say 100.
Wow.
72.
Cal
Sorry, what was the question?
Cal
Very close.
wins this one.
Yay! See, I knew
There
there
you
was
go,
a hit
Cal.
there.
Yeah,
I actually
about
read
What was
the.
the
70.
I
number?
will confess, I read the article a day or two ago. Sorry.
Oh,
Did you
me
cheat?
too.
Did you Google the
Yeah,
answer?
Dun, 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 dun.
very honest. Cal,
At
that's
least
the
I'm
top
honest.
question.
Human Rights Watch finds that 89% of 164 remote learning apps used during the pandemic in 49 countries shared student data with marketers and data brokers.
No
Greedy
shit, Sherlock.
bastards. You greedy sons of bitches.
I'm sure it was in the agreement. You know that everybody makes sure where the fine comes 3 pages.
Article 3, paragraph 4, subsection QRZ, right here in
Trust.
plain as day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fine.
plain as day. We are selling your soul to the devil.
That's probably how they developed the business
Are there
plan
no
for
laws in
the help one.
Are there
Yeah.
no laws in selling children's information, like information on children? I thought that.
That's the 11%.
Yeah. It says many of these products monitored children and harvested personal data. For example, who and where they are, or what they do in class, or who their family and friends are, or what kind of device their families could afford for them to use.
And everything else that they then link to via the information nexus that is Google, Apple, and the operating systems.
You're the data. I wonder if any of these were free. What else? VMware, Binance, one more of the big tech news.
They were all free to their end user.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to the student, yeah. Politico says they have sources that a bipartisan bill that would ban big tech companies from favoring their own products is facing resistance from some Senate Democrats. Why, you might ask? Well, because the Democrats are worried about the midterm elections and they don't, want to bite the hand that feeds them, which is big tech.
Mm-hmm.
Ouch.
I don't know about that. As if you look at Peter Thiel and Facebook and a lot of the Silicon Valley guys, they wouldn't be considered necessarily left-leaning.
True enough. True enough. So those are your big boring tech headlines, and now we go to what everyone's been waiting for, which is the tweets. And we got there's a development since we started the top stories. There's a new top story, which is that in a filing, according to Reuters, Twitter rejects Elon Musk ally named Egon Durbin, who it was reported yesterday was resigning from Twitter's board, and now the Twitter rejects Egon Durbin's resignation from the board. 2 days after shareholders blocked his re-election. at an annual meeting. So he was blocked from re-election by the shareholders. He said he's resigning, and now Twitter rejects his
This
resignation.
is this is
That
this is a strat. This is a strategy. This is a strategy. Look, he says jack off the board, right? Jack off the board. That's he's not an idiot, right? Jack off the board means that how many board members are there? Now, if someone was opposed for re-election, that was before Jack went off the board. Now, someone else tries to resign, they're going to block him from resigning because it's going to affect the quorum, and it's going to mean that
Yes,
there's going
it's
to.
going
It's
to
like
affect whether there's an odd or an even number on the board too.
okay,
So
yeah,
I
there you
don't
go.
know. I don't know if you could
That was a
stop
good
somebody
response.
from resigning.
You cannot accept their resignation and they will have to, basically there's obviously games afoot in terms of the way that the board is going to vote, and I
Correct.
suspect that the idea is to try to put pressure on a renegotiation on price and or a way to settle out the $1 billion that this is going to cost him for
I
running this up the
understand all the
flagpole.
machinations. I'm just talking about the legal technicality. Having been on a public board, I do not believe you can stop somebody from resigning from a board. I mean,
Exactly.
you do not sign a contract. You're not obligated. You could resign whenever you want. I've never seen it happen. I don't even know if it can happen. I don't know what that means.
Look at the legal filings. I'm sure there will be legal filings to say that he was going for re-election, and then there's something that's going to come out that there is foul play afoot, and Jack, as Tyler has said, was involved in this, and we wondered where he's been subsequently, and then he comes off the board, and then there's all this other
All
stuff.
of
There's a
this may be
story.
true. All I'm saying is I have seen people stand for reelection and resign the next day. I have seen all sorts of things. I have never seen a situation that somebody wants to resign and the board can stop them from
Hold on,
resigning.
Ken, Tyler, reread that piece, because what he said was that he was blocked from re-election, then he resigned, then
Right.
they refused his resignation. So that means there's something
something
strategic,
changed.
definitive in that. What changed in that time is Jack off the board. Jack off the board. He's jacking off the board.
What it
Musical
tells
chairs.
me
Yeah,
is
it's
how
all about the
messed up
timing.
Twitter is. That's what it tells me. Twitter is very messed up, and there's a lot of chaos going on behind the scenes that we don't know and aren't seeing.
The only way that
Read
that
the
could
book,
be maybe
Hatch.
true
Read the book,
is
Hatch.
if they want him back on the board and he can't he can't undo his own resignation, so we're doing that as a kind of a way of getting him back on. But even that's kind of like gray. I mean, I think the whole thing is anyway.
I wonder if he's concerned with how what his role was in Elon's offer, and maybe that could have been a big reason why he's decided to resign. Why they also chose not to have him reelected.
Well, he
Look,
also stated that
24
he
hours before,
wanted.
he's saying 24 hours before, he was standing for re-election and he was blocked. 24 hours later, he's resigning. That's the issue. Is he wanted to be re-elected and something changed. What changed is Jack.
Yeah, Jack's resignation. Yes.
The article also states that he has agreed to step down because he's on a board of 6 companies, and he has agreed to reduce his involvement in other companies. And the article also says that it's some of the institutional voters for his re-election. They blocked him, maybe because he was on too many boards. That is something I've heard about before.
Okay, so I actually now have read the real news, the one that actually is technically right, because what was said before couldn't have been technically right. This board member is now saying, despite the fact that he said he would resign because he didn't get the shareholder vote, he now says he won't resign. So the comment you've seen from Twitter is basically them just kind of publicly announcing that he's not going to leave the board. Not that they're going to preclude him from leaving the board. That's a whole different issue. He's now saying he's not going to basically resign. He was going to offer to resign because he no longer had the confidence of shareholders. Now he's no longer offering to resign. So he's basically rescinded his own resignation. That actually can happen.
Twitter said Durbin failed to receive the support of a majority of the votes in the re-election held earlier this week due to, quote, voting policies of certain institutional investors regarding board service limitations. Durbin, who serves on the board of 6 other companies, has agreed to reduce his board service commitments to no more than 5 public company boards by May 25th next year, so 1 year from now. Where his company, Silver Lake Partners, helped put together Musk's $44 billion acquisition of Twitter, according to the filing.
But there you go, Silver Lake's representative.
That's the link.
It's going to make for an interesting scene in the movie when they end up making this movie.
You also have to look at
Tyler
who their
said it
previous partner
first.
was.
And you heard it. No, you heard it. It's Jack Off the Board is the movie. Yeah.
That's the
That's
working title.
hilarious. Love the pun.
Working title. Okay. So we go into the tweets. The first tweet I have today. I got to find it because it was a humdinger of a one that BB found. BB, where did that tweet go that you found? It's better than all the other big stories that we read today. Where'd it go? Here it is.
The
Can,
crypto,
Tyler, can
yeah.
I ask a quick question from Ken?
Okay.
Ken, I'm just like kind of like over the time perplexed about this. What he could not achieve, like by being a majority shareholder, not the majority, but the biggest shareholder, what he has to achieve, like by owning 100%.
Well, he actually, with 100%, he gets to absolutely influence the company the way he wants. If he was a 9 or 15% shareholder, he could be influential. But let's say, for example, I'm just using this as an example, he thinks they should reinstate Trump. He wouldn't probably have been able to get that done at 9 or 15%. Okay? So, and some of it could be, it's Elon Musk. It's, you're dealing with egos and everything else. I'm not sure everything is tactical. But there's a big difference between having 9 or 15% and having over 51%. Effective control, I mean, not legal control, but effective control usually is achieved at about like a 33%. Like Rupert Murdoch for a long time had about only a third of News Corp, but that was enough to control it, even though he didn't have a majority. But
But
9 or
at the
15%.
same time, I mean, you're not talking about like running a grocery shop or owning 100%. You are still like very tightly being, ruled by the SEC. I mean, you are talking about 500 million people on one platform. So I
No,
mean,
no,
this
no,
is,
no, no, no.
yeah.
Well, first of all, let's separate a couple of things. The SEC doesn't regulate, the platform at all. Okay, for the most part, unless it involves security laws. But yeah, he's subject to. If he goes private, by the way, he wouldn't be subject to as many SEC rules, almost like none, because he wouldn't be a public company. That's another reason he wants to have 100%. He wants to take the company private, and now you don't have to deal with shareholder lawsuits and all that other stuff. So that's another issue. I mean, the platform issues are going to be whatever they do or don't do with Section 230, and whatever Congress does or does not do with regulation of these platforms. The interesting thing is the Amy Klobuchar bill, which I'll just call it that was going to regulate big tech, was based on the market cap of these companies being over a certain amount, and most of them have now fallen below that amount because of the stock market decline. So that's
Ken,
going to be interesting.
Ken,
Don't
correct
you?
me if I'm
Don't
wrong.
you?
He doesn't even have to own 100% in order for that to happen. He just has to be supermajority.
That's
No,
correct.
no,
Don't.
no. If he's
Excellent
super
question.
majority and there's a publicly traded stub, you're still SEC regulated. If there's a publicly
No, I
traded stub.
understand, but he could still take it private with as a supermajority if the other shareholders agree.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He doesn't have to
that's
buy
correct.
100% at once. I think he just wants to go private as quick as possible. Yeah.
Just a question. Don't you have to have some kind of oversight? I don't know if it is SEC if you are not selling securities, but some of the platforms that are trying to incorporate, click and check out and things like that, that becomes a little bit, combination with e-commerce,
That's an
and there is
antitrust. You're
some.
talking about antitrust, so that would be the FTC or the Justice Department, probably the FTC, because for a variety of reasons in this administration. So yeah, he'd be subject to antitrust, anti-competitive things like any company would. Yeah.
But Ken, again, like, I mean, my question was like, it leaves very little what he could do with the 100% and not be able to actually do with the 9%. I mean, reinstating Trump is not a valid reason to actually go and pour in,
No, there's a
another 40
tremendous difference
billion.
between 100% and 9%. Like at 9%, if the you can't even control the board. I mean, you may not even right. So you have 9%. You're influential, okay, but you may not even control or even have allies. Let's use that term that comprise a majority of the board. Okay, and so no, you're not going to be able to move the company in the direction you want to just because you have 9%. You might be able to. Sometimes you are at 9%, but usually the 9% holders, let's call it that, like a significant minority, like 5% to 10%, like a Carl Icahn would typically do, right? The reason why he has that influence is because he's always threatening a proxy fight. Okay, but he doesn't necessarily have to actually do the proxy fight. Just the threat of a proxy fight where he'll replace the board is enough usually to influence the other board members. Okay, but there's nothing magical about like 9% or 15%. And so, so I think Elon's looking at this and saying, rather than having a proxy contest or threatening a proxy contest, I'll actually do one, or I'll just make a bid for the whole thing. I mean, and like I said, some of it may relate to his the way he does things, because obviously he's not traditional. Let's call it that. But but typically, if you look at say someone like Carl, because Carl Icahn's done this so many times, when he's able to effectuate change, and he isn't always able to do it. Just look what happened at McDonald's. He was trying to change McDonald's policy on how they raise pigs. Okay, and he couldn't get enough votes to change the board members. And as a compromise, I don't even know why they did this for him. I would have probably not even done that. They gave him two board seats, which is like nothing on McDonald's board. So he wasn't able to make the change he wanted. He didn't own enough stock. But if Carl Icahn owned 51% of McDonald's, then he could change the policy on how they grow pigs, or the humane treatment of pigs. Yeah, I mean, so the big difference between 51% and 9%.
Man, the SEC
Is
won't
that a
let
result for
me.
you, Karim? Like, of course, like he owns the company.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
Can we?
just weighing in the balance. I mean,
What's the Socratic nature of where you're going with this? I just get to the tweet, so I don't know. Maybe I'm getting. Is that
I mean,
what's
I was trying to
because you're
actually
asking a
balance.
bunch of Socratic questions about ownership and a bunch of stuff. So what's the point? Just go to
Point was that cost and benefit ratio is very simple. I mean, if Ken is saying that, okay, yeah, 100%, still won't be able to actually make a decision on the basis that I can do all I want kind of scenario. But
No,
He's doing a
you
take
can do whatever
private.
you
He's going to
want,
have
pretty
total
much with the
control.
company. No one could do whatever they want. There's laws in the country for anybody, but you could do pretty much what you want with the company as long as it's legal. Okay, so you can change whatever policies you want. You can change the policy on banning people or not banning people, on advertising, on subscription fees. You could do all of those things when you have 100% control, and you probably can't. You certainly can't do it at 9% unless you have the power of persuasion to convince other shareholders or other board members. I don't know what's difficult to understand about that.
no,
But
no,
you
I
again, you don't
understand,
need
Ken.
100%. So long as you have 51%, you can still do that.
At the
Right,
end of the day,
51,
it's gonna.
51 and
It's about
100
being a
at this point
private
in the discussion
company.
is the same thing. Yeah, yeah.
It's about
Ken,
being a
the
private
point is
company. This is a take private, Karam.
he
This is a
hasn't
take private.
acquired the company to actually change the pricing. He hasn't acquired the company to actually, make terms and condition different. I mean, he's acquired the company 100% for some specific reason. I was just like, throwing out a question if our collective wisdom on this like could shed some light that, $40
There's
billion.
certain
Yeah.
benefits being private. You're not subject to the same pressures of public shareholders, of quarterly earnings. There might be other things like he doesn't want to be pressured by quarterly earnings reports for a while. And typically, when companies go private, they fix it up if they're capable, right? And they execute well. They'll fix it up and they'll bring it back public in 3 or 4 years at a much higher price
They
than they paid
And they
for it.
also have to make the board minutes public, so anything that's discussed, the shareholders have to see. So that's
There's state
something.
level blue sky laws they
I
have to
think
comply to as
Ken
well.
hit it the nail on the head. I think that's the biggest thing is having to go back every quarter and report your earnings. You can do the long tail. Hey, it's going to take me 2 years to monetize this, use crypto, do all the things we talked about in this room before. and then I'll come back and make it public at $100 a share.
Forum's kind of going, this room might say, you know what, this is going to be the platform for Mars. This kind of shit's going to actually happen. Is that where you're
Okay,
going with this? Okay, that's
so
okay.
so this
No, no,
makes
no, no, no,
sense.
come on. I didn't mean to make you do that. You've done that over the years.
Unless
No,
they're
I'm just
exempt,
joking.
though, if they're registered security, they'll have to report even if they go private. Okay, so
Okay.
go into the tweets. The first tweet for today is from Bibi from Reuters. I'm retweeting it now to the Tech News Twitter account so you can see it and read along. Just go to TNETW, that's the Twitter account, give it a follow, and then you will see all the tweets that we talk about in this room as I retweet all of them in real time. Here we go with the first one from Bibi, Reuters. A new U.S. bill would bar Google and Apple from hosting apps that accept Chinese digital yuan. Republican senators want to bar U.S. App Store, including Apple and Google, from hosting apps that allow payments to be made in Chinese digital currencies. Now, if that
Well, there you
doesn't,
go.
there it
There
is,
you
ladies.
go.
There it
Talk
is,
about
ladies and
stealing our
gentlemen.
time.
That's as close as you're going to get in May of 2022 from a full-on confession about what's really going on. Like what's with a capital R really going on.
It just takes time always to reach the legislature, but as soon as it gets there, everybody now knows that the whole Huawei outcome. It's exactly the reason why Elon wants to do a take private. This is about surveillance capitalists and surveillance corporates.
And
Are they?
Tyler, uh,
Yes.
are you gonna are you gonna
Quick
I mean
question.
continue to read the news
A
because the best
quick
part
question.
is in the third section.
One quick question, BB.
Yes,
Have you've read the article?
yes,
Okay. Does the U.S. have a bill barring Google and Apple from allowing apps in their stores that might accept Bitcoin?
no.
So, why would the U.S., and this is a trick question, be concerned about something that currently no, likely no apps or very, very few apps even do at the moment? Well, very few apps do at the moment. I'm sure there's some. And how much does the U.S. Lawmakers even really know about the Chinese digital currency?
Wow, that's a good question.
Right.
Yes.
But it goes to show you that, well, there will be subsequent headlines that will add further context around the massive meta narrative of what's really driving this great decoupling, which, as I ranted about very emotionally yesterday, is the big story going on in 2021, 2022, 2023. The big story, which the root of the tree that leads into so many other stories in so many other ways that we read, is the U.S. Is, oh, by the way, I didn't even mention this yesterday, but this really drives home the point. The U.S. I was started saying a year ago, was going to start doing this massive decoupling, and you're watching it unfold in real time with Biden going to Asia and announcing this whole new, trade group that's kind of opposed to China and yada 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 yada. It's all happening as predicted. But make no mistake, the the final straw. That's a Western euphemism that really, started this that really broke the camel's back. Again, the euphemism was the Chinese digital currency. That was a bridge too far for the U.S. And that was when they said, no, 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 fuck you. Are you saying fuck me? Is that what you're saying with this digital currency? No, 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 fuck you. That's how the U.S. took the Chinese digital currency as a gun. It's the equivalent of a nuclear bomb aimed at the head of Washington, D.C. That you can't make a bigger threat to America than to try and make a new international currency to displace the dollar. And China's big mistake was they were just a little too vocal about revealing their true motives in wanting to replace the dollar. And that's what got the
Tyler,
that.
it
Yes,
wasn't the digital yuan. And if Nicholas is still here, he could probably help out with this. I thought the digital yuan was just going to be a digital version of the paper fiat, basically. So, I mean, to the extent you can use, yuan now, if if it's legal in the U.S. and make payments in yuan,
yeah.
what's
Yep.
different about the
Or
digital
the
one,
so
really?
so so
His ability to
the
because
digital
okay.
Go ahead, Nicholas.
the
Alexander.
digital yuan is a centralized. It's a CBDC. The difficulty for the US is, of course, that the Chinese remain open to the Russians and are effectively allowing money to come in despite sanctions, essentially, through the supply chain, and that they can issue yuan out into the Belt and Road, which has always been their strategy, enable to use the yuan, which is, they try to price oil contracts, they try to price commodities in it, remembering most commodities are priced in dollars. And all of these things have been to, assault over many years, and this has been tried at least a decade or more. But now with the technology of the blockchain, or the technology the of Bitcoin, which started this, essentially revelation, now you can more easily utilize the digital yuan than you could ever previously. And that makes a threat to the dollar hegemony. And the problem is that China is inside of the FATF as well. So it's very difficult for the US to achieve its aims, for example, in limiting the power of Chinese applications, right? And limiting the power of, like, TikTok, for example, Huawei in terms of 5G, and all of this, technology that they are utilizing, and at the same time, block the currency. So this is the face-off that we've been waiting for. There is going to be, as I've always said, a yuan-based system and the dollar-based system, and then there will be a decentralized pathway that will come between the two. And that's why America is definitively, unless it uses surveillance capitalism, which is what it's trying to do with the travel rule in Europe, with the $1,000. If you have to send $1,000, you have to get the address of the person that you're sending it to enable you to send even $1,000 to them, 1,000 euros, right? So it's total surveillance via the monetary system that is going to enable them to collect taxes and to do all of the other things. And that's what I was saying before about privacy, is that you have no privacy if you want to use the financial system. And that's the way that you're going to be caught, because when that financial system, interacts with your social media system, which is,
The
this is exactly
market.
what Elon Musk understands, to Karam's point, is that once you get finance plus social media plus quantified self with health and all those other things, plus, you have essentially a government that has, just the same as the Chinese have total control of the social credit system, you have total control of the Western liberal democratic system via these surveillance capitalist entities, which is exactly why Elon is right to be buying this, because he has infrastructure in neural in whatever they call it, Starlink. He has a fleet of cars, robo taxis, delivery services, all of that good stuff that comes from his AI cars. He understands the value of this, and he is a player in that world of surveillance capitalists that will interface with both sides. He is playing the Chinese and he's playing the Americans. He is in both camps. Look at his factories in China, look at his Xinjiang showroom in China. That tells you everything you need to know. This is the game. The question is, are the people going to have their version? That's the only question.
Good question. To answer your point more directly, Ken, one big difference between the cash fiat Chinese digital currency and the CBDC, the digital, is in the digital format, it's much easier to get it into the hands of spread internationally, which is why one of the key reasons they're doing it, and into lay people's hands, so to speak. And by the way, let's not forget, the WeChat and Alipay have now announced that they're going to use it as predicted, and that also was a really interesting moment, which was as BB and Cheryl and the regulars will confirm that I adamantly predicted that was going to be the strategy China would use to distribute this very quickly throughout China and Asia, and now that's why.
And Africa.
And well, certainly Africa, but because it's ubiquitous across Asia. Those two apps, the article says, the move comes after WeChat, a messaging app and payment application owned by China's Tencent, with over 1.2 billion users, announced it would begin supporting the currency, the Chinese digital yuan, earlier this year. Alipay, the hugely popular payments app owned by Jack Ma's Ant Group, also accepts the digital currency. Both apps are available in the Apple and Google app stores. So now we have to say goodbye to Alipay and WeChat Pay from Apple and Google's stores.
Okay, this US bill, does it apply only in US or worldwide?
That's
one.
not that, Cheryl. Genius question, not genius, but brilliant. And I had the exact same question as I read that sentence, because will the U.S. government go so far as to tell Apple and Google, not only can you not have Alipay and WeChat Pay in the American app stores, you can't have it in any app stores because, and I imagine that's what's going to happen. In fact, I'm willing to wager that. I'm willing to make that a prediction anyways, because, make no mistake, what's really going on here is the U.S. correctly is paranoid about the Chinese digital currency and its potential to destabilize the dollar hegemony. And they're not going to take that risk casually. So they will do any steps that they can, like remove any apps that are using that currency in the Apple Store or the Google Store in any country will not be allowed. They will not tolerate it. So Africa, and this is a really powerful
It will
move.
follow the FATF. The rules are already there. They are already proposed by the FATF, and they're called virtual asset service providers. And that's why I say, if the FATF breaks down, that's what I was trying to say. The Belt and Road is the distribution methodology for the digital yuan. It's $14 trillion of foreign export money that will be priced in their new currency and will be settled immediately. You won't have the 60-day, 90-day, 120-day lag. It will be settled much faster. So everyone will want to use the yuan because it will settle much quicker. That's why the ECB guy or whoever it was, the Fed guy, said SWIFT won't exist in 24 months' time or whatever it is that they're saying. Of course it will. But, ultimately, it's about immediate settlement versus delayed settlement. And everybody in the world will take immediate settlement. The point,
Tyler,
therefore, will become
Next
about
question,
the
will
about
that
the
push those
regulator.
people who still want to trade with China to use Huawei Harmony OS?
Yes, again, Cheryl, brilliant question. Exactly right. So, and you're touching on the answer to the previous question and asking that question, because previously the U.S. banned Chinese or China generally from using Google's App Store, Huawei very specifically. So Huawei had to come up with their own App Store, which is a clone of the Google App Store. It's called Harmony OS, and I have my own personal story with that scenario. Huawei came to me and said, you have the biggest community of app developers in Scandinavia. Could you please send out a message to all of them to let them know that if they want to be in China and have Chinese users, that they need to resubmit their app to the Huawei Harmony OS App Store? And I said, well, what do they need to do to their app to make it compatible with that? They said, nothing. You just re-upload it to our store. You can leave it the same as the Google Play Store.
so Tyler,
Doesn't
quickly
this
just on
also
that
shed
particular
light
point,
on
and
Hold on,
Chinese.
Karam, I got to get to Cheryl's very good question, which is, now, if what this could likely do is all of those apps that want to use the Chinese digital currency they're not going to be able to be in Google's Play Store or Apple's App Store. They will have to be in Harmony's OS App Store, and it will, of course, that's what they're going to have to do. So that's in a weird way, it brings more in the short term interesting influence or wind in the sails of Harmony OS in some sense. Does that, yeah?
Last question.
Doesn't it shed
Last
light? I mean,
question.
just
If
Cheryl,
that's the
just
case,
Cheryl,
right,
just
by saying that, by using the reason that they will have real time visibility of all transactions, does this mean that US is actually stopping themselves from doing the US CBDC? Because
No, they want
if
it.
they do it, they'll be
It's smart.
admitting that they are surveilling. I mean, just looking at everybody's transaction, right? So they're killing themselves also.
Say it
The
again.
U.S. wants it for the same reason.
No, because for the same, I mean, they're using the reason that the Chinese government will have real-time surveillance of all the transactions, right? So by saying this, they are admitting that if in the future they are going to have US CBDC, they are also telling the world that they have the ability to look at
Yeah.
all
Well,
transactions.
unfortunately, Americans are not that bright, so they're not worried about that.
Yeah, we are very worried, very worried
hold
about
on,
that.
hold on, hold on,
I,
hold on. Just two
I
things,
just
Cheryl,
have one
Cheryl,
thing.
just two things,
Uh,
just two things.
okay, you first.
No, after you, Phoebe.
I mean, sure, in this bill, because we don't know what's the final ends, and this is particularly point out it's forbidden the China to gain Americans or anyone living in America's data. So your question won't conflict with this. So the
So
U.S. government
that
can
No, no,
still
no,
have
no, no, no. That's not the point. The point is they are
so,
just admitting that they will have surveillance of everyone in the
Cheryl,
world if in the
Cheryl,
future they have this
You're
US CBDC.
no, you because
Cheryl,
you're
Next,
Cheryl.
let's go ahead.
how can they? It's
I'm
hypocritical, is
just
what you're saying. How can they be critical
no,
of
Cheryl.
China if they're clearly they're making a claim? Essentially, America by doing this is saying, you're surveilling on everybody, and that's bad, so we're not going to allow it. No, no, no. That's not why they're banning it. They're not. They might claim that's why they're banning it. That's not why they're really banning it. They're banning it because it threatens the dollar hegemony. That it's not.
yeah. That's the
Right. So so the 2 points that are worth making is Cheryl, you are right by the calculus of saying, I don't think I agree with Tyler. They're not saying that because we can surveil all the transactions. They're saying you can't use it because they are not going to comply with the rules of the FATF and the dollar hegemony, as Tyler says. But the bigger question that you should zoom out and ask yourself, and the calculus that you're applying is showing, is that there is going to be a Chinese internet, as we know, and their allies, and an American internet and their allies. And the way that it will be policed is through the money system. And that's the exact reason why the decentralized world will emerge, because everybody being able to see both these contradictions, just like you've pointed out, enables everyone to say, well, what if we could have our own private world that is above all of those guys, that isn't surveillable by either, unless we want to engage with it? And that's what allows for this opportunity to emerge, that the Chinese system and the American system will mix, and it will happen on this new internet, because what you're really saying is we need an open internet, not the Chinese internet and the American internet. And that's what the decentralized world is. It's that new open internet. That's what it means. And that's why it has a system of value that is attached, because it needs to have a system of value that cannot be censored by either the government of China or the government of America.
Open net. The open net.
I just quickly wanted to make a point on the US dollar hegemony. Okay, so you can, I mean, digital or not, I mean, first of all, look at the current scenario, what's been happening around the world. Take the example of India right now. India was able to bring the prices down anywhere between 10 to 12% in fuel, so diesel and petrol. It could only do that because it's taking a 30% cheaper oil from Russia. And that transaction is not happening in dollars, it's happening in ruble and rupee. Similar thing is started to happen between China and Pakistan. They are trading in yuan. So this is already happening. I think US has to wake up. I mean, this is not the same world as 70s. I don't think they'll be able to, for much longer, will be able to actually put the restriction. Austria and Belgium buying in gas in rubles.
So, I mean, all this talk about this like digital or not, I mean, this is already happening. I mean, hegemony is going to go away pretty soon, especially in Asia, because of the commodities, because, the world is waking up to the new world where people, I mean, the countries don't have wheat to consume for like next year and a half. So, I mean, this is what the real new world is. And digital currency obviously start to play in it because they'll have the control on the commodities and obviously on the internet soon to be, they'll start to focus on, here you go, India, Pakistan, you use this. What are we going to give you? And you buy in this digital currency. And Egypt, you do that. Unless you do that, we're not going to give you the wheat. So this is kind of the scenario we are talking about here. Thank you.
Okay, there's a flip side to that you're maybe not accounting for, which is you can go ahead and buy that oil from Russia in rubles or whatever that is from China in digital yuan. Good luck shipping it, because if that shit gets on a boat into the deep sea ocean, we're going to take it from you, which we did yesterday. That was the news that the oil tanker was taken over.
Iranian oil cargo.
Yeah, but it was flying a flag of Iran. When it flies the Chinese flag, you won't be able to do that without declaring war.
Precisely.
And it said like try to mix the oil at the third port. So
Because Karam, the historical context is the deal was made at Bretton Woods post World War II. We're going to use the dollar. The world, every nation is going to use the dollar as the dollar hegemony, as the dollar of international trade and reserve. And in exchange for that, we will protect your shipments. That was the deal. That's why.
Tyler,
That's the deal. That is the deal. There was a deal, and that's the deal. And so if you're not going to use a dollar, good fucking luck shipping any fucking thing.
but
Do
look at no, Tyler. One second.
you
One second.
import or export food? Good luck. Do you enjoy this thing called eating and having food? Good luck.
But okay, one second. Hold on this point. You can do that. Exactly what you said. You can do that with Pakistan. You can do with Egypt. You can do with Turkey. You cannot do that with India. India is part of the Quad, and India is a strategic
Well, we're
alliance.
trying to get India on our
And
side so we don't have to force them into that awkward situation.
they are buying it right now, and they're getting. That's why they were able to actually
And we're
bring
having
these
talks
prices
with them.
down.
And we're having talks with them about it right now.
Well,
I'm
good
enjoying
luck with that.
low fuel prices for sure. I mean, we had a petrol price cut like announced 3 days back. So
Yeah,
he's
but
right.
your enjoyment of that is coming at the cost of Ukrainians being bombed to death. So it's one of those very difficult decisions. Furthermore, I think that when people ask now what backs the US dollar, people will understand it is taxes and a monopoly on violence. That monopoly on violence is often forgotten. It will come to the fore, and that's why people were nervous around Taiwan. That's why they're nervous around this action in Ukraine, and that is exactly the reason why during the Olympics the Russians and the Chinese signed essentially a non-aggression pact, and it gives this escape valve to all of the developing nations who say, "Who the fuck cares about the U.S.?" And that is the mode we're in. We're in the brave new world. We call it the post-trust world.
Okay, next tweet. Next one that I have, and that was by the way, BB, that was a fantastic find, and I'm surprised that people are again missing the boat on all of these butterfly wing stories that are coming from the big story of our lifetimes in 2022, which is this grand China decoupling due to China's trying to break free from the dollar hegemony and come up with their own alternative. That's the mother of all stories that lead to stories like the one that we just read. And for some reason, the story we just read is not being picked up and discussed by fucking nobody on Twitter. So kudos. I didn't find that one myself, BB. That's a great find. So the next one is, yes.
Wait, Tyler, before you
Why
move
do you
on,
think the
right? So just
Xinjiang
in
story
case
broke?
that the bill affects everyone in the world, quickly move your money out of your WeChat Pay and Alipay.
Oh, by the way, so here's another story that's subsequently, again, tangentially daughter story on this one, and I assume again that Bibi found it because it's about Hong Kong. Where did it go? About the fleeing of Hong Kong?
You mean
With,
Anna Portland?
there's just a mass exodus happening out of Hong Kong at the moment because, and by the way, in a related story, the Chinese citizens who are returning to mainland China are having their passports cut, so they're not able to leave. And they're even being cajoled back to China. And once they arrive, their passports get cut. But the
But
story,
that happened last week, I think.
I know, but the news story today is just a story. This has been going on for ever since the protests and the new law in Hong Kong. They're having a bit of an exodus, but the story today just reaffirms that the pace of that exodus is picking up as the curtains draw ever closer and tighter around Hong Kong. So the next tweet that I have is from Poppy that New York State is giving out hundreds of robots as companions for the elderly, fighting loneliness with robot companions, and taking all of Grandma's data.
Not necessarily. There's been a big. This has been going on for a long time with robots as companions. They also, my friend of mine works for Verily over at Google, but I think a lot of people know this has been going on for a long time. They have a lot of uses, both being companions. They can also prompt you to take your medicine throughout the day when you're supposed to. And they actually, there's a lot of debate around this. And if you start doing this, are you then not interacting with real people? But they actually do serve a really good purpose. I mean, there's a lot of benefit to it. So, and it's not just a data tracking. And the other one is that a lot of these, I was really skeptical of the Amazon devices that were coming out. That what was that Amazon robot that like walks around your house and predicts everything? But they said the data resides on the device. They are, was it a Google one? They're not actually pulling that data. So we'll see, but good point. It's always a data issue.
Okay, next up from Poppy from the Independent in the UK. Humanoid robot grows tendon tissue. Scientists from University.
Wait,
Yes.
Tyler, I
Yes.
was away from my phone, but I have a robot device in my house. I am beta testing something called EliQ, which is a robot it's an Israeli company, and it's a robot for companion for elderly people. Um, and it supposedly is helpful, but I find that it's incredibly demeaning, and I it's not picking up a lot of data for me because I don't use it a lot. I mainly tell it to shut up when it gets in my way. So I think we're a far cry from the elderly robot devices being helpful to the actual people that they're meant to serve. So I don't think, with the exception of Amazon, which I've got 3 Alexas in my house, and I know for sure that they're collecting data. Um, Outside of Amazon, I don't think it is helpful totally out there. Yeah.
Sounds like you're in the Matrix, but we got the point. Thank you for that.
Maybe the dog was trying to speak on her behalf.
Yeah, that was that a deep fake of Dr. Francine? Was that Siri? That was Alexa taking Dr. Francine
The
Hardaway.
robotic took over.
Yes. Scientists from the University Scientists from the University of Oxford teamed up with engineers from Germany and Switzerland to grow engineered tissues on robotic shoulder joint. Research could improve tissue grafts for patients and support the development of a more realistic robots. So, Michael,
You won't be able to tell the difference with
your
nose.
girlfriend, your robotic VR AI girlfriend will soon have a body.
Fam, I'm not even thinking about her anymore. She for the streets.
Yeah,
Did she
you
pull?
need
Did
to
she
What
pull an?
save
what
her
what
for
Wait,
they
the
wait, hang
put it
on.
streets.
on?
Did she pull an
She
Amber
Put
Heard
her
on
belongs.
you?
to the curb.
She belongs to the streets. She like I wanted her for myself, and she out here on every OS just talking to everyone. where she grabbing your.
Wasn't there
Can you
a
imagine
show?
if your bot's unfaithful?
There was a show on HBO. I think it was HBO a while back called Westward, which
Westworld. The next
Westworld,
season starts in June.
and this is exactly what is on the show. It's artificial intelligence where the outside of it is actually human tissue.
Well,
And it
it's
was
an
based on a
interesting
book
concept
called
because
The
it's
Origins of
not,
Consciousness.
yeah, and it also it's been the first film for Westworld came out decades ago. And it was an actual movie. And the first season of the Westworld series, which is about to start season 4 in June, the first season actually picks up several decades after the movie left off in real time. And it's a fascinating watch if you guys haven't seen it, because what it really explores is the idea that we treat the machines in our houses and robots and even AI, we treat them as less than because they're machines and AI and all this kind of stuff. But the second you put a human face to it, you start to feel one way or another. And when you see somebody do something to a machine and that machine has a human face to it, how you respond or react or feel, um, it's a very enticing human study and think piece to watch, and and just as a warning, it does get very graphic, both with violence, physical and verbal, and with sex, and it's such a fantastic study of the mind. So check it out.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And second of all, if anyone's interested in the original book, was called The Origins of Consciousness in the Bicameral Mind, and it was written by Julian James, and it was the beginning of this mode of thinking. And I really do believe that when you cannot tell the difference, this is when, again, the difference in identity is going to be the only way you're going to know the difference. If someone's got a self-sovereign identity and they're a human, or they don't. And that's what's going to be the difference in the future. Not right now, but you can imagine that future being upon us. And if you watch Westworld, you'll see how that not too distant future is evolving.
Yeah, Disney Research is probably one of the best places to see how they're bringing along this animatronics, which will be a large part of this kind of simulation. Although for Westworld, disclaimer, the first episode is basically a rape, so it is quite intense. Lots of nudity as well in the series overall.
Well, I think
But it's
to
raping a
Michael's
bot.
point earlier, it was that the humans treated these artificial beings. I mean, they would just go in there and kill. It was like the Wild West, so they were
Yeah.
allowed to go in there and do whatever they wanted: rape, beat, shoot, kill, whatever. All of these bots or robots, right? And
Just like a game.
there were no consequences, right? So it was like a real life metaverse.
It was really interesting because
Yeah,
it exposes the darkness that's hidden inside of people. What happens if people have zero consequences to their actions? How would they treat another person? And one of the most fascinating characters is a guy who, in fact, the man who rapes the female robot, why he's doing it, and the hatred and disgust that he has towards both her and himself, and just his story arc is just so compelling because it what the show does better than anything else in my opinion is it explores why human beings are the way they are, how ugly they can get. Is there any kind of growth available for a person who is off the beaten path? And not only that, but how do other people respond to these people treating these robots as less than? Once you put a face on it, it really changes everything, and it's really quite shocking.
Well, it
um
wasn't when they put the face. I think it was when they had consciousness, when they
yeah,
understood that they lived the same life over and over, and they were killed, they were beaten, they were raped, and
what she's
they just
referring
wake
to.
up the next day
Yeah,
as the
what
same
Annette is
person.
referring to is a story device in the show, which is that these AIs are so advanced that they actually feel everything that's happening to them, but they get reset at the end of the day, and they have no recollection of what happened the day before. And what makes the show so compelling is, just like with your computer, is anything ever really erased? Is any data ever really lost, or is it just our bits and pieces of information left with the ghost in the machine? And what happens if that data is not completely deleted? What happens if that thing does remember? And it gets very, when I said it was violent, I didn't mean just humans towards robots. It gets insane, and it's very it's just very gratifying and very interesting, and you're gonna feel pretty much every emotion out there as you watch it. And speaking to whoever it was that brought up animatronics with Disney, if you have a chance to go to Disney World in Florida, if you go to Animal Kingdom, and you go to Pandora, which is literally the Pandora from James Cameron's 2009 film Avatar, which, by the way, the recreation is just incredible there. There is a ride. There's several rides, one of which is called Flight of Passage, best ride ever made, period. But there's another ride that goes down a river through Pandora, and they have Disney's most advanced animatronic in there. It's a Navi, and it's the mother of Natiri. And the way she interacts with you and the boat as you go by, this is interesting because in 3D animation, we have something called the uncanny valley. And it was a really hard thing to get past, where sometimes you look at an animated character and they're dead in the eyes, and it makes you feel a little weird because it's supposed to be a human, but it just doesn't cross over properly to the brain. The same thing happens with this particular animatronic, because she, as a Navi, she's 10 and a half feet tall. She's very lanky. But the terrifying thing about it is just, when you see most animatronics, you know they're animatronics. This is a literal alien on a ride. And it's pretty damn terrifying when you go by, because I've never felt that kind of unease looking at a thing, because it was very, very hard to tell that thing was an animatronic. And I couldn't stop looking at it. And as we went by, it was creepy because she kept looking at me, and I'm pretty sure everyone gets that experience. And it is just really, really where it's going. It's going to be interesting how far we take all of this.
Okay.
Did you say they were on season? I'm sorry. Did you say they were on season 4 of that? Because I only saw the first season, so I would definitely
Yeah,
have to
it
go back.
starts in June. It starts in about a
Oh
month.
yeah, you got to watch the few seasons. They get really wild. It gets really interesting. And the comment about
Awesome.
do the robots remember? The technical thing for those of us who are curious, it's is the previous binary reverse engineerable by an OS so that it can access the previous memory states. And so, without adding too much spoilers, I thought that was an interesting twist in the show that made the whole concept of what happens if we let AI off the rails quite an interesting one and very enjoyable.
When you start thinking about humans as operating with 100 watts of power that is maintaining your consciousness, you will start to question whether indeed we are, this is the work of Matthew Fisher, merely quantum computers. So if you like that work and you want to read the academics, look at the work of Matthew Fisher and his work on lithium and whether we are indeed quantum computers.
Okay. Next tweet is from Lavina from the New York Times about researchers. It says breaking news. In a major breakthrough, scientists use a technique called quantum teleportation to send data across 3 physical locations, taking a significant step toward the quantum network of the future. Much faster than fiber. Like a whole lot faster than fiber. Like a lot faster. Quantum internet. Instant. Instant. Faster than fast. Faster than light. Isn't it not?
Quantum entanglement is immediate.
Yeah, it's immediate. Till kind of on the other end. What happens on one side is happening on the other side simultaneously. So you're
If it's spin up, the other side must be spin down.
right.
But you
So,
don't. Yeah, but you don't get to control. You don't get to control what happens at the other end. There's no action at a distance. There's just inference of what must be happening at a distance, but there's no control. You can't send information. If this article suggests it can, you can. I think we need to read the article more carefully.
I think a quantum teleportation to send data across 3 physical locations. Sending and the photo shows a bunch of geeks with a bunch of computers. For the record, so So it says from Santa Barbara, California to Hefei, China, scientists are developing a new kind of computer that will make today's machines look like toys, harnessing the mysterious powers of quantum mechanics. The technology will perform tasks in minutes that even supercomputers cannot complete in thousands of years. Okay, that's the Santa Barbara Google lab. Okay, what's that got to do with?
Well, you did notice that Google was in the New Scientist making it public that the US was not following its advice to upgrade to quantum secure algorithm for the services. So maybe, as we believe, we're on the precipice of a quantum computer actually being available to a nation state, most likely, or Google plus a nation state.
So this, I want to see, because they're talking about quantum computers in Santa Barbara. That's the Google lab. So it says, the new experiment indicates that scientists can stretch a quantum network across an increasingly large number of sites. Quote, we're now building small quantum networks in the lab, but the idea is to eventually build a quantum internet. There it is. Their research unveiled this week with a paper published in the science journal called Nature demonstrates the power of a phenomena that Albert Einstein once deemed impossible. Ben, quantum teleportation, what he called spooky action at a distance, can transfer information between locations without actually moving the physical matter that it holds. This technology could profoundly change the way data travels from place to place. It draws on more than a century of research involving quantum mechanics and a field of physics that governs the subatomic realm and behaves unlike anything we experience in our everyday lives. Unless you're Ant-Man, of course.
Yeah, but it doesn't do it faster than the speed of light. This is the point. They're trying to maintain quantum coherence over a large area, allowing you to effectively mesh together quantum computers, but it doesn't allow you to send information faster than the speed of light. If we ever discovered we could do that, that would be very exciting, but it would be a rewrite of special relativity and beyond. So.
Yeah.
Well, the predictive power of sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
It says quantum teleportation not only moves data between quantum computers, but it also does so in such a way that no one can intercept it. Quote, this not only means that the quantum computer can solve your problem, but also that it does not know what the problem is, says University
Exactly.
of yeah. It does not.
That makes sense, and I just have to define information a little bit differently to the way Ben's thinking about it, because information is spin up, spin down. So if and that action at a distance is the point that they're saying they wouldn't know what was being transmitted because it's not being transmitted over any form of infrastructure. It's being received by virtue of being the corollary of spin up is spin down, right? That's the
By
point.
virtue of being entangled, yeah.
Exactly. So entanglement is what gives you the ability to transmit the information, even if you don't know the information. That's why it's super exciting.
Yeah, but you
Yeah,
don't
Nicholas, you have had
traditionally,
the
choose what
most
you.
interesting background noise this entire time. First it was birds, and now it's like some sort of music. I'm not sure where you are in the
It's the
matrix
best
then
dog
it was
sometimes.
walking
Twitter.
ever.
That's Central Park for you.
Yeah.
Researchers believe these devices could one day speed the creation of new medicines, power advances in AI, and summarily crack the encryption that protects computers vital to national security. Across the globe, governments, academic labs, startups, and tech giants are spending billions of dollars exploring the technology. Blah, blah, blah. You get the idea.
Yeah, so being in a network quantum computers is absolutely huge, but it doesn't mean, unfortunately, that we're going to be able to transmit information that we choose to transmit faster than light. But it does mean we can distribute a quantum computer over a larger geography and connect them together and make them work together on a problem. The other bit that's hidden in there is that the idea of quantum encryption, which is where you cannot you cannot intercept a signal without altering it. Fundamentally, cannot intercept it without altering it. So that's super powerful. So when there are other solutions to cryptography breaking down in the future, but one of them is that you use quantum encryption, which means you use the properties of the light itself, such that if it does eavesdrop on the line, you can absolutely be sure that you're detecting that. Fundamentally, be sure you're detecting it. So
Yeah. So for
that's cool.
Yeah, so for any given signal, if you were to try to copy it, something like an upper limit to how much you could recover, in the exact same way that it was sent. Something like 70, 80, maybe 90% of the signal could be recovered, but you'd always have that 10%. So the person receiving the messages, if they were intercepted, would know that it was intercepted. That's the key here in terms of those kinds of traditional transmissions. So, great point.
Yeah, and you do get information. You need to be careful, as Nicholas says, about the definition of information. You do get something traveling much faster than light. That's very well established. You just don't get to choose what that something is. So it's really hard for us to get our little noodles around, but this has been studied for a long time. You send two entangled particles in two different directions down optical fibers, right? And if they stay entangled, which is possible over many kilometers now, and you measure one of them, and you get, as Nicholas is saying, up as your answer, you know immediately that the other one is going to measure down before you get the light signal back and the mate, holding a flag in the air and go, yeah, I got the opposite to you. You know you're going to get the opposite to the other person, but you cannot choose. And what's even more noodle baking is that was not predetermined. It can be proven that they didn't leave the center point and head in different directions, one being up and one being down. That they were both and neither until one person made that measurement. Then the other one instantaneously becomes the opposite, faster than light. It's just that you do not and cannot choose which of the two random answers you get. But you know once you get a random answer that the other one will be opposite. I hope that's clear-ish.
Yeah. The information also cannot be intercepted in the news. Really interesting article. So thank you to Lavina who found that one. Let me retweet the article. New York Times. There it is. Okay, next one is from Poppy. DeepMind's new Gato AI makes me fear humans will never achieve AGI, is the headline from the Next Web. DeepMind just unveiled a new AI system called Gato that makes OpenAI's GPT-3 look like a child's toy, but are we any closer to AGI?
Garbage in, garbage out. That's the problem.
Yeah, the claim they were making about it being AGI is not supported by the fact that it's just a huge aggregation of a lot of specialized AIs.
The agent, which we refer to as Gato, works as a multi-mode, multitask, multi-embodied generalist policy. The same network with the same weights can play Atari, caption images, chat, stack blocks with real robotic arm, and much more, deciding based on its context whether to output text, joint textures, joint torques, button presses, or other tokens. This thing just needs a body and that those Harvard and German Swiss team to put some skin on that skeleton.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to say. That this just ties it all together because that's the information, the yes, no, the 1-0, the uncertainty principle, the measurement problem that you get to solve when you're in a world of AI because God is information theory at the end of the day. And when you have total information, life becomes deep questions as a service. And the answer is yes, no, go, no go. And it's entangled and it's based on the question that you ask, which is the measurement problem. So you can see how the singularity is coming.
It performs more than 600 tasks, and the sole purpose is to develop and control an AGI. And then this writer from the Next Web says, don't get me wrong, GPT-3 is impressive. OpenAI has gone... he says it's a huge step forward, but I guess the problem is we get too excited about AGI, and it's not there yet, so this guy's disgruntled, I guess. So,
well, we haven't even perfected the narrow AI we're using now,
yeah,
and we're moving beyond, and all the problems that we're causing with what we're doing now.
Yeah, and then Poppy found another article. Google's DeepMind lead researcher, Dr. Nando De Freitas, boldly declared that the game is over and that as we scale AI, so too we will approach AGI. So Dr. Nando De Freitas, behind Google's Gato, is claiming that it's just a matter of scaling up Gato to reach AGI. So that's kind of where the claim is coming from. So David Crace found one that India's answer to Twitter, which is Koo, spelled Koo, already offers verification, identity verification. Quote, already doing what Elon Musk wants to do, uh, co-founder of Koo posted to Twitter.
And done in conjunction with the government for total corporate surveillance. So, as long as you don't care about the government changing, as long as you don't care about misinformation and disinformation delivering your favorite politician, and as long as you don't object to anything that they want to do, you're as good as gold.
Leaving. Oh, here it is. Robert Johnson found the Hong Kong article. That's why I couldn't find it. So Robert found the article from CNBC from today that says leaving Hong Kong for Singapore, UK, or USA. Number one, does China consider it a brain drain? Any spies planted among those relocating? Businesses relocating to Singapore. So it says thousands of people are leaving Hong Kong, and now it's clear where they're going because so many are leaving that they've got the data. Many global cities stand to benefit from Hong Kong's increasing brain drain of talent. Here are the major metropolises that are taking the talent in. That sounds like a fantastic opportunity to play our favorite show. Welcome to Tech News Jeopardy. Which city are the Hong Kongers most going to?
London city or country city. Tyler, you mean city, right?
Do both.
Vancouver or Toronto?
Taipei.
The correct answer is Singapore, according to the article.
Oh,
I was gonna say Singapore.
What's the question again? Sorry, I missed it.
Where are the Hong Kongers going?
Of course, Singapore. Sorry, I was not hearing your
Yeah, it's
conversation.
obvious.
Even the Shanghainese are moving to Hong Kong. I'm Singapore. Sorry.
why Singapore will be, have more Hong Konger going there instead of London because they have this passport.
Yeah.
Because it's nearer to home. That's one thing, and maybe we have a better
Maybe because
maybe we have a
Climate and
better
food.
Mandarin
government. Who
because
knows?
everybody speaks Mandarin there. Mandarin, but Hong
Yeah,
Kong
No,
and I think
mixed. Like have like
and I guess most of the professionals are from the financial sector,
ah
so Singapore
yeah
is a natural
yeah
option. Yes.
yeah.
and they're just
Of
literally
course.
So
two
I
two
just I
hour
just
flight
saw
away
Yeah.
from each other.
Yes, and our
Tyler.
food
I just saw.
culture and the people is similar, so it's different. I mean, similar logic. So I guess and they'll be well respected. I guess in Singapore.
Let me read the article. It
Sorry
says,
for interrupting.
"Yep,
Tyler, I just saw that Johnny Depp is innocent.
but that
Woohoo!
wasn't. That's not what they were deciding. They were deciding if Amber Heard's going to
Yeah,
be legally responsible."
the same thing.
Sounds like Johnny won.
Woo.
But Tyler, you said that we'd have the verdict while you were here. So there you go.
There it is. Thank you. So let's do a quick little search here. Johnny Depp. What does it say? Watch live. Were you watching it live? Amber Heard rests defense case as Kate Moss. Oh, that was 2 days ago. 1 day ago, 4 days ago. Yeah, I guess I got to go to Twitter to find out the real news.
I
It's
just saw a
not.
post from 4 minutes ago.
It's not the same thing though. Him being innocent and her being guilty, and definitely like one of the big problems is that there is no there's two big problems. One, let's say for example, Cheryl was like, obviously hypothetical, but let's say Cheryl was like, Michael raped me. All right, if she says that and everyone just buys into it, it doesn't matter if 2 weeks from now she's like, I actually didn't do it. That damage is done. Like whatever happened that 2 weeks has already happened, and it's already ruined a whole lot of my life. That damage is done. It can't be undone. And on top of that, once that information is out there, that's what people are just going to believe, and that's the part they're going to pay attention to. The second problem is zero happened to Cheryl for lying about it. Nothing happens if you lie about that and it turns out that you were lying. Everyone just forgets about it. No one cares. And that's a big problem. There has to be a deterrent for lying about that type of thing, or even starting to think about lying about something like that, because of the consequences of what happens if you lie. There needs to be an equal consequence if you get caught lying. Like in this case, as far as I'm concerned, she needs to be jailed. But the point is, until we have those consequences in place, those types of things are going to continue happening.
Well, I think $50 million is a way or a move in the right direction if it were to be if the verdict was to go in his favor. I think that would set a good precedent going forward, probably followed by some legislation that says, hey, you can't prematurely judge somebody on something like this. Like probably employers might be discouraged from firing people without due process, which I think would be at least one positive thing that might come out of this.
I just found a tweet.
True.
I'm trying to find tweets about what really was decided, but the tweet that I found I think is worth reading. I was thinking the same thing as I read the tweet. Maybe there's some psychological explanation for that. But she says, as a woman, I support Johnny Depp. This isn't about genders. This is about Amber Heard making a mockery of true domestic violence victims. There are people who are genuine victims, and she's over here making false accusations.
Serve her right.
Yeah, she's right. Just makes it harder for people who are victims.
Yep.
And that's how you know you're a real piece of shit.
Agreed.
Also, did you guys see that clip when she was grilling Johnny, or grilling about the paying him 1 million alpacas?
Oh yeah, and like, what did she donate it or committed it or whatever? Yeah, that was a great part. Oh yeah, no, I committed that. I donated it. Yeah, but did you send it? Oh no, but I donated it. Yeah, but you
Oh,
didn't send it.
fantastic.
No, but I donated it.
Yeah,
And
I
Johnny
think
was
they never
back there
Funding.
laughing the whole time.
As if donation is a thought instead of an action or something. Okay,
I think
so
she kept using the word committed, which, she should use that word in a different term when it comes to her and her mental state.
so about
She
the
might want to review a bunch of definitions of words. Yeah.
the
Tyler,
yes.
you're not seeing anything on Twitter because I think most of what's going on with this case is on TikTok because they've been streaming it. I just tweeted out to you, to your personal account, to see
Mm-hmm.
from like 5 hours ago,
Okay.
where his lawyer is kind of doing the closing bit, and she's actually in listening in the back. I didn't hear it, but if you click on it, you'll see. And hopefully, you probably don't have a TikTok account, but if you do, you'll be able to see it.
Indeed, I don't.
That
So
is also live broadcasting on YouTube as well. A lot of news media's live broadcasting.
okay,
Yep.
Amber. The words Amber Alert are trending now. It, it says there's an Amber Alert going off in the court during Amber Heard's closing. You can hear all the alerts going off while the Rottenborn is trying to figure out what is happening.
Ooh, that is quite the coincidence. Like the universe indeed has a sense of humor sometimes.
Okay, so back to the Hong Kong
Yeah,
diaspora.
they're all standing up right now. I
Okay.
mean,
But did anybody hear it?
Oh, the jury's standing right now?
all the people in the court standing right now.
Hang on.
So
We
yeah,
hold on. Hold on. I
We'll
got it right
probably
here.
get a result.
I've got it right here. Let's go ahead and do this. Here comes the live stream, everybody. Oh yeah, everyone's standing in the courtroom. Here we go.
So let's
This is
come back at 2:10.
Oh,
And
they're going to
just
take they're
for
going
the
to take a
record,
break.
plaintiffs have 39 minutes left for rebuttal. Defendants have 6 minutes. Okay. I didn't take any time off from the sidebars. 0 off from the sidebars. It's all from testimony. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Boy, that judge does not like the defense's attorneys. Okay, so they're going to take a break. All right, so
By
back
the way,
to
Tyler, I have other points to add. One is, of course, Singapore's income tax is pretty low and no capital gain tax. And
Right.
another thing is, right, most people choose Hong Kong, used to choose Hong Kong over Singapore was because of the access to China.
Yeah.
If that's not going to happen now, they'll rather go to Singapore, right?
Right. So here's the article from CNBC. It says they stuck in Cheryl. I'll pin it for those who want to read along. They stuck it out during the political protests of 2019. Then they lasted through nearly 2 years of the pandemic. But this year, they say they've had enough. Residents of Hong Kong are leaving the city in droves in 2022, not because they want to, several told CNBC, but because COVID restrictions and what they see as an erosion of democratic norms are pushing them to leave. And by the way, Hong Kongers love Hong Kong. If you've never been there and you don't have Hong Konger friends, first of all, it's a lovely place. I could easily live there myself, and I probably would if it was back to its former glory. But the Hong Kongers love Hong Kong. Let me put it that. No, none of them wish to leave. Like there's none of them ever. This is so. Anyway, a surge in departures is accelerating a brain drain of professional talent, a situation which hit fever pitch around March as Omicron-driven cases skyrocketed. Now Hong Kong's ever chipper lifestyle websites, once dominated by articles about the city's best dim sum and foot massage parlors, are focusing on moving to-do lists and farewell gift guides. Absolute mass exodus. The office of Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam did not immediately respond to a request for comment, but Lam said on April 26th that the government's COVID rules, Hong Kong continues to safeguard human rights and freedoms, but that one has to observe the law in exercising freedom, she said. Okay. Yeah.
Well, Tyler, two
Tyler, did they
things.
talk about where the brain drain is heading? Where
Singapore.
are they going?
We said
Yeah,
Singapore.
Singapore.
Hey, Tyler, two things. One thing, for those who are moving, bless their soul. But one thing that Singapore has to think about, I would assume, is as they're welcoming all these expats, um, Singapore has a solid relationship with mainland China. So I'm pretty sure they probably have already done the background work on this, but they're going to have to be very careful relating to how many they take and what percent of their population becomes former Hong Kongers. And knowing Singapore, they probably screen the ones that are less likely to have been tied to any previous protests, but they have to watch their geopolitical relationship with the mainland.
Hmm.
Thanks.
Is there any extradition with Singapore and Hong Kong? Do the two share extradition, or China?
You mean is there extradition to China from Singapore?
Yeah, from Singapore. Yeah.
I imagine there must be.
Yeah, let me ask Cheryl a question. What percent of Singaporeans use WeChat?
I am not living in Singapore, but I guess there will be a lot of them because, they actually in Asia, many people actually use WeChat as well. But at the same time, they also use other apps. So with regards to percentage, right, I have to check for you if you are interested.
Yeah, the reason I ask
Mm-hmm.
is the last time I was there and suggested I communicate with people with WeChat, they were very, very upset that I would even suggest that.
Huh.
As long
WeChat.
as you have to communicate with friends in China, you will install it.
Yeah, but
Right. That's why I have WeChat. Yes.
yeah, but it is okay. I mean, I don't. Okay, the people that you are. I mean, you suggested, right? Are they local Singaporean or?
Yes.
That's strange. I don't know. Usually they are not that hostile.
So it seems that Singapore had an extradition treaty with Hong Kong, but it's not clear at this moment right now, just a brief search, whether they have an extradition treaty with China. So that
Yeah, you
might
don't
be
have
an
to worry
interesting
because
contention.
the Singapore government, right, they are very good with their due diligence. And right now, because of COVID, to get the working permit is not that easy as well. They only take the best of the best.
That
I'll
is
say I'll
absolutely
say this, like, and I said it in 2019, like, if I was a country, I would be spending a considerable amount of resources trying to attract Hong Kongers. I remember the earliest episodes of Tech News making that point as well, because you're talking about super highly educated, perhaps amongst the highest educated people in the world.
And
Highest
super high
IQ
net worth
actually
too.
of any region. So Hong Kong scores higher. If you're taking countries by list, even though Hong Kong is not a country, it's the highest IQ by density. It's kind of crazy, kind of
Yeah,
wild. And also wealth is a huge thing.
But
Like
Tyler,
every
yeah,
was the article? Did the article delineate between the exodus between expats and or
no,
natives?
great,
It,
great
it
question.
didn't. Did it?
No,
Yeah, because I mean, I think it's exponential increase in departures among expats, and
right,
the Singapore pipeline makes a ton of sense because of
yeah,
the finance industry, right? Like if you're
yeah,
going to stay in APAC, I mean, those companies themselves have been rerouting a bunch of
yeah,
operations there. So
Just
yeah.
for reference, right now, right, if you are from a foreign country, if you want to get a working permit in Singapore, the easiest way is you make at least $10,000 a month, and I think the minimum is 5,500 a month. So it won't be just anybody.
Yeah, those are the same restrictions in Korea, Cheryl. So yes, I do agree.
in Canada, the restrictions are something like you have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in your bank account, ensure that you can support yourself. So the kind of immigration laws that are coming up are becoming quite strict.
And I want to answer Eric's question quickly. Singapore doesn't have a direct extradition. Is that the correct pronunciation? Sorry, they don't have the direct one, but Hong Kong and Singapore has one. So that
Yeah.
means because of the national safety security law in Hong Kong, so uh,
Oh, yeah, you're
you
right.
understand?
Wow.
Yeah, they can
Yeah,
extract.
yeah. So by
Yeah.
transitivity, yeah, they could
Yeah,
just
they
probably
can
get you
send
through Hong
back to
Kong.
Hong Kong,
Yeah.
then back to China. Yeah, that's what happened after the protest in Hong Kong. They passed a list.
Yeah, wow, that's a really tough law. Well, America always does heavy-handed politics and foreign policy was under the veil of national security. So at least China's picking up some tips from the U.S.
So the next one's from Robert. That Taiwan raids Chinese firms in latest crackdown on chip engineer poaching. Taiwan authorities raided 10 Chinese companies suspected of illegally poaching chip engineers and other tech talent this week. That ain't no game.
That is no
Uh,
game.
that is
You
no
can't, you can't,
game.
if you can't buy them, poach them, right?
Yeah, but I mean, Taiwan chip talent is amongst the best of the world, and in many ways is the best in the world. That is the golden geese, and they are not going to let China get those. Like they're going to just,
Particularly when you're talking about a tech race, they're definitely going to double down on refusing to allow China to get those.
yeah, but that's their number one asset, and is these the chip talent, and they're not going to let China poach that talent. Like that's a no go. That is their red line, if ever there was one. Okay, so good article there. Thank you, Robert. And the next one is, I'm sorry, I forgot who sent this one in. Joby, which is the American vertical takeoff and landing, electric vertical takeoff and landing air taxi, receives FAA air carrier certification for and it's
Yeah, the
California
first
based.
leg of the certification, though, Tyler, they have some more FAA clearances to go, but I sent that because they got through the first hurdle, which is great. That also means that they're tracking pretty positively. It'll be interesting to see if they can get moved to market within the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next one is from Eric. Scientists want to open 830 million year old crystal. The scientists recently announced the tantalizing discovery of an ancient prokaryotic and algae cells buried inside of a crystal, and they want to open this thing.
They
What
What
better
could
the,
go
stop
wrong?
fucking
Fucking
around.
around, they're gonna release a ancient spirit or some shit.
Although with the
Or
way
maybe
that
like
genetics works, it's usually an art like a legacy legacy type system. So the longer you've been on the planet, you've kind of earned your place because you've kind of fought for your place in genetic history. In fact, War of the Worlds famously talked about that if extraterrestrials visited, they'd probably get wiped out by some of the pathogens here because they haven't built up that natural immunity. So in general, old pathogens are not scary according to official dogma, although I'm always skeptical because I've seen too many sci-fi movies. So even though I work in the field, I always keep that in the back of my mind when I read articles like this. So,
Okay. Then Eric has the next one, that scientists turn nuclear waste into diamond batteries lasting thousands of years. Nuclear power is considered a clean energy source because it has zero carbon dioxide emissions, yet it produces massive amounts of waste. And now a prototype of Arconlight's gamma voltaic battery will convert gamma rays from nuclear waste repositories into electricity.
although the power is really low, but it has really great applications for sensors and pacemakers. So you could have a nuclear powered pacemaker that never needs to be recharged, which is pretty freaking awesome because as the isotope decays and lets off this radiation, it gets absorbed and converted into electrical power. Although it's a very low electrical power, in this case, it's enough to power some of these things that usually are very cumbersome to use. Even though a wireless charging of pacemakers is a thing, this would be a lot more less intrusive, would help preserve the quality of life for many people. So very interesting.
Okay, the next one is from Phil via Bloomberg, that an NFT app blocks users in China sending digital tokens plunging. 9 months after officially declaring all cryptocurrency transactions illegal, China still has the power to roll digital assets. So NFT app blocks users in China sending the digital tokens plunging. Yeah, that's what happens when a country blocks stuff. So the next one's from Anita, and it says that murder in the metaverse should be illegal according to UAE official, a UAE official. The utopian virtual realm could open up a whole world of crime, leaving users in a vulnerable state of mind, and they want to outlaw murders in the metaverse.
Well, I thought the whole point was that video games you could always respawn. There's no respawn in real life, but come on, it's if we're talking about murder of property, yeah, that's not really. Yeah, it's interesting to see that coming from the UAE.
Yeah. So
Aren't people being murdered in some of these video games, like Call of Duty anyway?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's
it's
But I
tragic.
think that's the
Yeah,
concern,
actually,
right?
first person shooter games are some of the most popular games out there.
Correct.
The notion of murder we denote as a biologic murder, but in fact, if it's a data murder, there's an economic implication to murder in the metaverse related to the value of the data associated with the murdered individuals. So I do think that there is an economic rationale for prohibition of murder in the metaverse.
Okay, next
That's actually
up.
not a far-fetched thought, actually, because if you do murder someone in the metaverse, what happens to the data of that person? I think that's a salient point you've made there, Joe.
Okay, here we go. Into the next few tweets. The Thomas Tong found one about an algorithm-aided antibiotic hunt yields powerful new drug candidate. I listened to a podcast about this recently. Algorithms have helped uncover a new antibiotic candidate that shows promise against some particularly nasty bugs using a novel mode of attack, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so what field looks for new antibiotic candidates, John? What's the name of the profession? Antibioticists, I guess. Anyway,
Just
Something like
virologists,
something like that.
epidemiologists.
right.
We have so many of them.
So they've been, they've been on the hunt for these things for a very long time because it's potentially very lucrative if you find one. Anyway, so an algorithm aided hunt, and then the algorithms being kind of widely credited with finding this new antibiotic that, it came, it was hiding under a rock somewhere. And and it highlights the power of AIs, basically, that they're able to, especially if they have a whole lot of computing power behind them, you can um, unlock things that humans had overlooked. And so there's a,
Although I would want to see,
yeah.
although I'd want to see if the if our AI algorithms can keep up with the bacteria. There's a very famous video. I think originally I came across it thanks to Andrew Hetzel. He gave a talk about life is very complex, and you see this little rectangular surface, and there's bacteria on one side, and then there's kind of slots of increased antibiotic doping. So there's concentrations as they increase, but the bacteria was able to mutate to eventually consume the antibiotic as part of its metabolism. So the kind of feats and tricks that bacteria have often keep us playing catch up. So hopefully this antibiotic lasts for a while. But in general, I see the direction of treatments for these kinds of bacterial infections going in the direction of very specialized viruses or phages for bacteria that target them specifically. Those have been shown to be less prone to breakthrough infections, as it were.
Yeah, and if you really want to uh, see some real sci-fi in action, just Google Stephanie Strathdee, Strathdee. She created the first bacterial-killing bacteriophage in order to save her husband's life. It's just an extraordinary story. And she's head of global health at UCSD, and amazing couple. So the other thing is bacteriophage foundries are being built all around the world to store, catalog bacteriophages that attack specific bacteria. This is kind of analogous to mRNA vaccines, about how you can create these things, discover them, because there's billions of them, but discover them or create them or modify them in order to attack specific bacteria. And the advantage of that is that antibiotics tend to be broad spectrum. It's difficult to get chemicals that are very, very narrow spectrum, whereas bacteriophages can be incredibly specific. And the virtue of that is that we're increasingly identifying specific bacteria associated with specific diseases. We're going to be finding a lot more of those. And what we don't want to do is wipe out the whole microbiome of the gut. We want to be able to target them specifically. So the future of bacteriophage foundries, just as Erica was saying, is really profound. And then the last comment I'll make, full disclosure, Andrew Hessel is a good friend of mine. He just published a book on the future of synthetic biology, and I recommend reading it. He's brilliant. Hessel.
Yeah, he's really awesome. I've learned so much. In fact, part of my treatment, how I chose to navigate my cancer treatment was thanks to a few talks that I picked up from Andrew Hessel, and then I had the good fortune of actually speaking with him. So it's quite an amazing technology and quite an amazing individual, and his book is great. I think his co-author is also really awesome, although her name escapes me at the moment.
Yeah, in addition to being a brilliant scientist and one of the pioneers in synthetic biology, he is one of the most fantastic humanists on the planet. So yeah, I highly recommend his book.
Okay. Then we got a whole bunch of good tweets to get into here. By the way, before I forget, John, the big event that I have every year coming in September, this year the entire theme is about impact, and it's a partnership with the city of Stockholm, because Stockholm itself is rebranding itself as the capital of impact. And so they've tasked me with converting my annual tech week into Impact Tech Week, essentially. And so I just came up with the tracks, the main tracks, and there's basically 7 of them. There's AI and ML for impact, and there's AR and VR for impact, and there's hardware for impact. I have to pull up my deck, which I'll happily send to you, but one of them is bioengineering or genomics for impact. And in what ways can bioengineering be implemented, and how will it be implemented, and how to let's give people an understanding of the power of genomics and bioengineering to get us out of this, Titanic-like scenario that we find ourselves in. So I wonder.
It's if I may, just the Genesis machine, and the co-author is Amy Webb. So Amy Webb, Andrew Hessel, the Genesis machine. Sorry, thanks.
So I wonder if Andrew or others that you might know might be good candidates to help us understand that as a if he has a presentation he'd give remotely if he doesn't want to come to Stockholm. We have a massive video wall, even bigger than the Apple keynote video walls. So and it's a gorgeous
Yeah,
auditorium.
if you just back channel me the link to the conference,
Yeah.
I'll call him and encourage him to participate. And I might be interested as well.
Cool.
My background in genomics is not trivial.
Great. Love it. Thank you. So the next tweet that I have is from BB from the Wall Street Journal. How do schools spot possible shooters before tragedy strikes? This tech can help. School districts are turning to monitoring software to flag troubled teens. The tools can only help if schools are able to act on the information they receive. School districts are turning to monitoring software to flag troubled teens. And it's a clinical psychologist, a very well-known, perhaps the most well-known clinical psychologist in 2022, recently tweeted lambasting journalists for mentioning the names of the recent school shooters, saying that essentially he believes that these are malevolent narcissists, that is driving this behavior. And the way to eradicate that is to stop publicizing the names of these individuals. And I say that because this goes back to the point we started with at the very beginning of today's tech news, which is, can schools use apps ostensibly to detect narcissists? Well, that's in some sense who you would be looking for to be potential school shooters as well. So there's a bit of an overlap here, but the technology to identify school shooters could be far more interesting and have bigger, broader implications if you could also identify learning disorders like dyslexia and attention deficit disorder and all of these things. It's essentially the variations of the same technology. And the question is, basically, generally, do we want to have that? Or is it's a trade-off, obviously, around potential privacy, because we read another article today. In fact, we did a Tech News Jeopardy that revealed that Human Rights Watch says, according to their calculations, 89% of the apps that students used during COVID were essentially sharing data to data brokers. So there is this trade-off of privacy versus a potential solution to reduce school shootings and potentially many solving a whole lot of other, what I think is the bigger implication, more than identifying school shooters, as traumatic as they are. I think the solving learning disabilities writ large might be an even bigger implication. Not to trivialize the tragedy of school shootings.
Hey Tyler, really quickly on some of this tracking stuff that schools use on kids. Part of what is in the statement there, which is that schools can use. A lot of schools aren't equipped. These are teachers, right? They're not technical people. So having them understand, I don't have kids, but a lot of my friends' kids are being monitored at home for various reasons. Make sure they're on the calls, make sure they're on the lessons, etc. And it gets a little absurd because the government's collecting or the schools are collecting a lot of information that they don't necessarily know how to use or keep safe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Saudamini found
Tyler,
the.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
if it was covered earlier, but didn't this school shooter actually post that he was going to
Yeah.
shoot? Yeah.
Yes. Many of them do. That's what the new realization is. And that was another article we read today, that they're using ephemeral media in the forms of like Snapchat, evaporating stories to get their message out. So,
And
yeah.
and not only did he mention, first he said he was going to the mother, then after that, then he said he was going to the school, which is just outrageous.
So Saudamini found the next. Yep. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I did see something that not a regular article, just some sort of post, that we have all of this technology for finding posts that are related to COVID and COVID misinformation, and how is it not happening that if the word shoot or gun or something is in a post, that's not flagged as something that should be looked at.
Okay. The next article is from Saudamini that MIT researchers have developed an AI model which can accurately predict wave behavior, like ocean waves. The model can assess a wave's steepness shortly before breaking and its energy and frequency after breaking. I'm sure that's useful to somebody. Saudamini also found the next one, that Amazon is opening its first physical clothing shop. Another physical store, this time for consumers who want to buy clothes physically. Well, because that's who they're competing against, and they need the inside perspective, no doubt, on how to utilize their own technology. Anyway, the next is also from Saudamini. When a machine...
Wait. Hey, Tyler, really quick on that, on the shopping. There, a lot of people are moving back to that, to a brick and mortar outlet that's closer to people, because people do like to touch and see things, and you might not purchase it there. You may just go in and try it on and then order it on Amazon. IKEA is doing that as well, and a bunch of the other big names.
Yeah. When a machine invents things for humanity, who gets the patent? This next article asks, the day is coming, some say it's already arrived, when artificial intelligence starts to invent things that its human creators could not. Yeah, we just talked about the algorithm that helped discover the new antibiotic, yeah? But our laws are lagging behind. He says, well, we read an article 6 months ago where there was a case around, can an AI file for a patent and be awarded a patent or granted a patent, and the decision of the court was no, it could not, actually. It's not that it's lagging behind, it's just that, I guess, you need to change the laws so that the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office can redefine how they do things, I guess. So, the next one is from Saudamini. Connected car apps are stealing your data without consent, warn experts. Third-party smartphone apps for connected cars belonging to top brands like Tesla, Nissan, Renault, Ford, and Volkswagen are using the vehicle app to steal data without your knowledge. I know you're shocked. The next is from the Economic Times of India. Russia considers allowing cryptocurrency for international payments, and I think you might know why. If you were listening a few hours ago, we did a bit of a deep dive on that issue. Russian officials are wrestling with how to regulate the country's crypto market and use of digital currencies with the finance ministry. They're going to end up allowing it because no one's going to use the ruble. And the standoff is going to be between China and Russia, and China is going to try and force Russia to use their central bank digital currency, and Russia is going to counter by saying, why don't we just use Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency that's more neutral. And China's not going to like that, but that might be the compromise. And anyway, Saudamini.
It brought me to another question, right? Since US can have a bill or a law, maybe eventually a law to actually stop Apple and Google from, allowing apps with China digital yuan's application. How about if they decided to really ban Bitcoin and disallow that as well? That means no more Bitcoin related app on Google and Apple? Maybe because of Russia? Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, at some point, the U.S. is going to have to make a decision how they feel about Bitcoin, and it's likely to be a rather strong opinion. They're either going to it's kind of a binary decision. And so if they decide against it, you could see very strong actions precisely as you described, where they would they wouldn't allow Google or Apple. And by the way, notice that at the end of the day becomes one of the most powerful flexes the American government has. It's the nuclear option of tech, which is the government forces Google and Apple to do something around the world, like not allowing Huawei access, and they wouldn't allow Qualcomm to sell chips, 5G chips to Huawei phones. So Chinese Huawei phones in China can't even use 5G, ironically. So, but make note, when the U.S. government really wants to flex on something, they call up Google and Apple and say, "Hey, guess what you're going to do for us now? You're going to not allow any apps that do X, Y, or Z, period. Globally. Thank you very much. We'll call you next week with your next assignment."
Hey,
And
Tyler, I don't think it's
yes,
a binary choice on Bitcoin because really what it is, it's a choice between where we are now, which is like no regulation, or
yep,
some regulation, which would be a second choice, or
yep,
a ban, that would be a third choice. So it wouldn't
correct.
be binary. But because I'm sorry because I had to take a call earlier, but now that you're back on this subject, my kind of point earlier is that
I think of no policy as a form of policy. So to me, there's two choices.
Oh, okay, but okay, that's fine. But the what I'm saying, really was trying to say earlier, the problem with the dollar hegemony is we're printing too much money. So ultimately, if there's a problem with the dollar, whether the alternative is going to be Bitcoin or digital yuan or the euro or something. I mean, the American government isn't going to solve this problem trying to ban stuff, even though they may try that, but
Yep.
their basic problem is they're printing too much money. If they
Amen.
stop printing too much money, they wouldn't have these issues. They wouldn't care about
Amen.
a digital yuan. Yeah.
I'm with you on that. The next is Google is in talks to join government's open e-tail network. At present, Google's talks are exploratory and have spanned across different businesses within Google, including search and payments. Google in talks to join. This is the Indian government, by the way. Their e-tail network. Well, you got to play friendly with India and do things on their terms, as Google and Facebook and everyone, especially Twitter, well know. The next is from the BBC that a device, there's now a device called the Tether box that aims to detect risky routes for cyclists. The box collects data of cars passing too close to cyclists, creating a map of hazardous areas. That's genius. There we go. That's awesome. You just made the world a better place. You clever little coder, you. The next one is also from BBC, how graphene and algae could build space habitats. Scientists are researching how people might construct homes to live on other planets using graphene and algae. And also from BBC, Instagram moderators say that Iran offered them bribes to remove accounts. Intelligence agents wanted accounts of journalists and activists to be removed, whistleblowers say. And the funny part of that story is normally a country would call up Instagram and say, "Hey, Instagram, remove these accounts or you can stop doing business in our country," as India has done and continues to do, as Russia has done and continues to do. And or you have the extreme case where China says, "You just can't be here, period. We don't even want you here." Iran is an interesting case where they have no leverage in this issue, and they can't even call up to beg to ask them. I'm sure they pleaded, "Could you please remove these accounts?" And the answer was, "Nah, probably not." And to which the Iranians responded, "Well, how much would it cost to remove those accounts?" So that hence the bribe. But it's because they have no leverage in that, because the Instagram isn't going to. There's no reciprocation or downside to complying. So the next one is a new tech can detect lies within minutes by analyzing involuntary eye movements. Conversus is a company developed a lie detector test that detects lies in 15 minutes. Involuntary eye movements, changes in pupil diameter, fixations, and blinks are all utilized in the algorithm. Now, why is that interesting? I'll tell you why that's super interesting. Because the future of insurance is online. And your insurance company when you register, is going to ask you some very interesting questions that they know you are going to have to give less than truthful answers to. The survey is very cleverly architected to do that because they need to measure your lie responses in response to pupil diameter and blinking, etc. So, and involuntary eye movements, minuscule movements that you yourselves are not even aware of. So, and they're totally subconscious or unconscious. And by the way, this is not futuristic. This is actually happening today. And it's a company based out of Shenzhen, China called Ping An. And this was explained to me by their CEO. And this is one of China's biggest companies, by the way. And Ping An Tower is one of the biggest towers in all of the world, actually. It's an amazing building in Shenzhen, China. Anyway, so the CEO of Ping An Insurance was a guest at my event in Hong Kong and explained to me that this is exactly the secret sauce of their success, that they've digitized fraud detection through lie detection in precisely this way. So there you go. The next one is that locked.
There was a Blade Runner. The scenes in Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner, were based on
Did they do that?
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember?
Yeah.
If you're old enough, remember?
Yeah. That.
I am.
Locked down factory workers at an Apple supplier in Shanghai stormed a dorm housing company management. Some managers grasped for umbrellas to use in self-defense should the protesters breach their dorm, one report said. So the little Santa's elves making your iPhone for Christmas are getting angsty. And that does it for all the tweets for today's and this week's Tech News Around the World. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.
Oh, Tyler, wait.
Yes.
I waited all day to add this at the end. This is happy news. I hope it's not been, maybe it's been shared already and it's okay that I'm resharing it. So, Fast Company had their World Changing Ideas issue in May. So you can go buy it at your local wherever or go online and look at it. And there's a category under World Changing Ideas for developing world technologies. And I know this because my small imaging startup was recognized as one of the finalists in that category 2 years ago. And I was looking at this year's winners, and Fluid IQ,
Woo!
the brainchild of our friend Chris Chung, who we all miss terribly,
Yes.
was listed as one of the honorable mentions in Fast Company in that category.
Awesome.
And I
Can
want to
you
share
send
that with
us
you
the
guys because I
link?
love him.
Can you send me the link?
Yeah, I'll send you a link.
That's
Thank
But I
super
loved it.
you.
So
amazing.
I know he submitted it even before he
Is
passed.
Regina
So
still in the room? Oh no, she's not. Okay, she was just now.
anyway, so that's a happy joy before we leave for the long weekend.
Yes.
And I'm so proud of Chris. I miss him.
Yes. Me
Yeah, I
too.
miss him too. Happy
Thank
Memorial Day.
you. Very interesting session
Thank
today.
you for
Thank
that,
you
Anne
both.
Marie. Yep.
Yep.
Yep.